us to figure out, okay, is there something available for this particular client? So when you talk to Bianca, you talk to me, and your client's going through everything, make sure that you tell them, hey, by the way, they are looking for some assistance. Let's figure out the best program for this particular client. And then it's our job to then cross-reference. Once we get the application, we'll cross-reference all 17 or 18 different EBA programs that exist, and figure out the one that's best for them, and we'll offer them the 3 options.
Yes,
either that program, a standard conventional program, or a standard FHA program, and then they can choose, okay, this one makes more sense, or, options A, B, and C, and we kind of show it to them, and then they can decide, would I prefer to put a couple thousand of my own money into it, or would I prefer to get the down payment assistance?
Exactly, I agree. So it's a great program that has helped out a ton. We also do have, aside from down payment assistance, we have grant programs that you only have to put the 1% down. So like Jad says, depending on their scenario, depending on a lot of different variables, we'll give them the options. We have DPA, down payment assistance, 0% down, or we have these grant options where you get the 1% down, and then your agent can help you negotiate some closing costs. So depending on the scenario, depends on which program you would put them in.
You only work in Georgia?
No,
We're licensed in Georgia and Florida, and we're getting licensed in Michigan.
Alabama too, I believe.
Yes, and then we have connections at all the different banks in all 50 states. So if you ever have a client, like I just had to refer one of my top clients, about 2 houses with me here. I personally am not licensed in Texas, but I had a warm intro over to a good mortgage broker that I know in Texas and clients in Houston. Make sure that I was all set up before you just called the person. So I called him, make sure everything was set up the way that he likes it, and then one other program I wanted to talk about, which is pretty popular, especially what we've been noticing is in Gwinnett County, a lot of people are buying investment properties. So when they go to buy investment properties, there's 2 major things that people are looking at. They're looking at the down payment, and then they're looking at qualifying for the home. Right. So the first thing I want to touch on is qualifying for the house. Oftentimes you'll have self-employed borrowers that might have a difficult time showing enough income to qualify for a house. So 2 pieces to that. Number one, the cool part about Fannie Mae backed investment property loans is that Fannie Mae allows us to use the potential rental income of that property that they're buying. So I'm just going to give you an example, a real life example. This guy made $55,000 a year, but in 2023 he bought 3 rental properties because he had enough money saved up, and the rental income from the properties he was buying was enough to the potential. It wasn't even rented out yet, but the potential rental income that the appraiser said this house is going to should give you around $2,000 a month. This house should give you around $2,200 a month. We can use that to offset the new payment. Therefore, a guy with a $55,000 salary actually qualified for 3 investment property loans in the same 3-month period, right? Even though his salary was only $55,000. Another way to qualify is there are some people who don't have any salary, they don't have any income, or they don't show it. Another way to qualify for that is something called a DSCR loan. A lot of people talk about DSCR, they're not quite sure what it is. It's as simple as it sounds. Literally, we're doing it right now. If the property is going to rent out at $2,500, again, according to the appraiser, it doesn't even have to be a real lease, and the property is going to cost $2,500 a month, the client is automatically approved pending that appraisal. Simple. They just have to come up with a down payment. We don't look at their income, we don't look at their tax returns, we don't look at the other properties they may or may not own. We're only looking at the performance of that property that they're buying. It's called DSCR. So the last point I want to make is, then the other thing is, how do I come up with a down payment for this? Something that you might run into is somebody might have a couple properties right now, they're paying 3% on their property. They're like, I don't have cash, I want to keep cash out, but I don't want to pay 7 or 8% by getting cash out. We have a new solution for that as well. They can get a cash out home equity line on an investment property. We are one of the only people in the state of Georgia that offer this product. So they own a property, they're paying 3% interest on this property, investment property. They're like, well, I have $100 grand in there. I want to take out 50 to 80 so that I can go ahead and put a down payment on another property. Most people don't have a solution. Our solution is an investment property home equity line of credit. Multiple ways of qualifying. This isn't a mortgage class, so we're not going to get into that. But if you have those types of scenarios, make sure to reach out to us because we now have solutions for that.
Yes, we do. So
What's the rate?
The rates? The rates for those are anywhere from 7 to 9%. Yeah.
Well, awesome, guys. They will be around, so at lunchtime you can say thank you for your, or not lunchtime, at break time, you can get their cards, get more information, ask them any questions, and you can say thank you for the sandwiches.
Thank you all. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for the
Yes,
sandwiches.
yes. And obviously today we're going to be talking about negotiations. So negotiations will come into a lot of factor in all those tools that you have through your lenders. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Deborah Bettolotti. I am the compliance broker here at Maximum One Executive Realtors, and you don't really care about that. What do I know about negotiations? I am a Rennie certified instructor. What that means is real estate negotiating institution instructor. It was a designation. Rennie unfortunately retired.
You have more of these.
I will get, there's a friend, there's one. I'll get it for you. Rennie retired, the owner of Rennie retired. There's some movement going around, so it might be coming back in one way or another. That'll be announced shortly. But I do have that experience. Come on in, sit on in, wherever you want.
Well,
We have experience. I have the experience in negotiating. But more importantly, my real experience about negotiating has to do with this. Oops, oh, I thought I had it in this one. I messed up. I thought I had a picture of my kids in here. But, so my grandkids and my kids, right? We have all been having to negotiate when it comes to your kids, right? So negotiations have a big, big factor when you are negotiating. We negotiate every single day in life. So, with that being said, this is the handouts that we will be giving you. Take your phones to it. You will receive all the handouts that way. It was quite a bit, so I did not print them out. You're welcome to take a photo. I'll be showing it periodically so you can have it. No need to be looking at it during the class. Today's class is interactive. Today's class is going to give you the ability to really understand some quick things. The class I teach for negotiation for Rennie is a 12-hour course. So obviously, we're not going to be able to touch on everything that I teach at Rennie, but we will certainly touch on some simple things when it comes to negotiations. You can come in. Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. So with that being said, let's move on. Today is Negotiation Mastery. What you're going to be learning today has to do with negotiation, different skills in negotiation. You are required to be here the entire 3 hours in order to get credit. So with that, the 3 hours, we will have a break at about 1.5 hours. We'll have a quick 15-minute break. You must be here all 3, and you must fill out the course evaluations with all 5 stars. No, I'm kidding. I don't have to do that. You can be honest. I don't get offended, but they do get sent out to the state to make sure that you were actually listening. There is no test or homework. We will do some interactive activities, and with that, our objectives are to have some key negotiation skills. We know that that's important right now, and I won't say you're going to truly master the art of persuasion in 3 hours, but we certainly want you to get a little bit of the idea of it. So with that, why is it not moving? I hope this isn't done. Yeah. With that, we're going to develop strategies to overcome challenges, and we are going to, I think it's down here. So with that, we're going to be making sure that you understand. In order to do that, what we need to make sure you're doing is we need to make sure that you are silencing your cell phones. This is a pretty intensive class. So with that, we want to be able to really pay attention. And in order to do that, I'm asking that you turn off your phones, or at the very least, have them on silent. I may have to do a little adjustment here for my notes. Okay. Obviously, this is also done on Zoom, so I don't think any of you guys will be driving, so I'm not going to worry. We do want you to actively participate, be yourself, and respect others. Ask questions. I am not one that gets offended and say, whoa, 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 slow down. You're more than welcome to do that. I have no problem with you telling me to slow down and to tell me that you need me to explain something again, because the only stupid question is one that doesn't get asked, right? We are going to have some fun. We're going to do some actual interactive negotiations. we definitely want the questions. We want the participation. Of course, if you're telling me everything you ate from breakfast to dinner last night, I might stop you because we don't have all day. So we only have 3 hours to really do what I normally teach in 12. So we want you to please raise your hand. We have a pretty good class here, a pretty large class. So in order for you to really be heard, I need you to raise your hand. And we need you to share relevant information. If I am talking to you about a negotiation skill and somehow you just want to tell me about the great dress you bought yesterday, that's not relevant, right? Unless you're going to tell me how you negotiated the price on that. But with that, that's what we need to do. If you do have a burning question and we are running behind, I may ask you to park it. When I say park it, it simply means that you're going to write it down and make sure that you ask me at the end of the class. Share, I love you to share. I really, really, really love you to share, but please get to the point, land the plane, and we're going to talk about landing the plane, which simply means get to the point. We are, of course, going to limit but encourage that. We want you to ask questions. I already really discussed all this. The only stupid question is the one that doesn't get asked. And I already told you who I am, but I am also a gold standard instructor, which I'm very proud of. What that means is basically I have to go through some studies through the Real Estate Education Association, and I'm also what's called the Distinguished Real Estate Instructor Candidate, which is only about 12 of us per year. There's a total of 76 in the country. They're the ones that really speak at all the NARP conferences, GAR conferences, etc. This is my negotiating background. So I'm a grandma of 9 boys.
Wow.
One day I might get a girl, but as of right now, the one on the left there on your right is actually 2 weeks old yesterday. So, no, is he? May 10th. He was born May 10th. So, yeah, he's almost a month old. Wow, time flies. But the oldest one turned 6. He's the one on the far left, and he turned 6 yesterday. And he is my passion because he is a type 1 diabetic, so that's my passion. He was diagnosed at 11 months, almost died, so he's my little miracle. All right, with that, who here has been licensed in real estate for more than 20 years? Wow, more than 30? Nobody more than 30? Oh, yeah, you and me. What year were you licensed? Oh, you beat me. I licensed in 94, I believe. So we have a great veteran here. And how about 20 to 30? 10 to 20? Good majority of you. What about 5 to 10? Couple of you? Under 5. Okay, awesome. We have a great group of people here. Just because you have been licensed less than 5 years or more than 30, neither of them is an advantage or disadvantage. We, having been licensed for 30 years, are constantly having to change, right? We can tell you we've seen a lot. I've been licensed in Florida and Georgia since 94. She beat me since 82 by quite a bit. You look way too young. So with that being said, it's something that we're constantly having to collaborate and figure out. And the only constant in real estate has to do with change. Anybody know of any changes that are happening right now? Nothing, right?
Same old, same old.
Same old, same old. Well, I think there's one that's a little bit different, yeah?
Commissions.
Yeah. And when is the date? I hope everyone has it marked on their calendar. Right? Anybody know the date?
August 17th.
Thank you, Ed. August 17th, the world changes according to real estate. Not really, guys. I kind of agree with Ed in the sense that same old, same old. Is anybody concerned about it? Anybody willing to be admitted? Admitting it? A couple of you are concerned. Just a little. Guys, I don't really feel there's any need to be concerned. And we're going to talk to you about the skills and the knowledge that you will gain. And this class will directly impact the changes that are happening, right? But here's the thing. Real estate compensation has always been negotiable. We, as real estate agents, did this to ourselves by talking about it using words that should have never been in our vocabulary. Words like standard, words like normal, words like this is how things are. This is what we usually charge. Anisha, you had a question?
Sorry, I don't, can you tell me August 17?
Oh, sure.
I don't know.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. Aisha wants to know what according to the world of real estate changes August 17th. August 17th, the MLS co-op goes out of the MLS. You will no longer see a co-op in the MLS as per the NAR settlement. So no more co-op will be stated in the MLS. It cannot be in private remarks. It cannot be in showing time. It cannot be anywhere. Don't try to get creative. We're going to talk about it. But here's the thing. We in Georgia are lucky and blessed because of the fact that we already knew these changes were coming about. So our contracts had already changed. Breda, I hope you guys know what Breda is, but Breda, our Brokerage Relationship Act, that one actually already stated that we had to have a buyer brokerage agreement signed when? Lisa says before we ever create a relationship. So we've already supposed to be doing that, with a big supposed to be doing that. How many of you guys speed and don't care if you get caught? That's what we're doing when we're not doing our buyer brokerage agreement, guys. You're breaking the law. Understand that. You are breaking the law in Georgia. There were only 18 states in the whole United States that had a requirement of buyer brokerage agreements. We were one of the 18. So that was a beautiful thing. I'm so glad, because guess what? All these other states that haven't been accustomed to having a buyer brokerage agreement, that's the other thing that happens August 17th. They are now, all 50 states must have a buyer brokerage agreement signed prior to ever showing a property. What the buyer brokerage agreement establishes is the fact that the buyer is responsible to pay you as a buyer broker. The buyer, that was already in the buyer brokerage agreement. But we just said, oh, don't worry about it. And I'm guilty of this from years ago. I'm sure many of us might have been, where we said, it's a free service to you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, which is a true violation of the Code of Ethics. But we said it. We said, this is a standard. This is what most charge. Oh, don't worry about it. The seller will take care of it. Any of those things sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
But it is free then if you put 0 on it.
It is free if you put 0 and you are truly not getting paid, says that. That is true. If you are truly not getting paid, but if the seller's paying you, it's not free. And that was part, it's actually in the Code of Ethics. And
It's free to them.
but it's not. So Ed says, but it's free to them. Actually, I had this argument, and that's why I studied it through the Code of Ethics, because I thought the same thing. It's truly not free to them because it's out of the transaction.
So it's tacked on.
Correct. So, and it's actually in the Code of Ethics that we are not allowed to say it's a free service. I didn't even realize that was in there. Yeah. It was a surprise to me, too, because we said that. We were taught to say that, right, back in the day.
No, I never said that.
Oh, you're better than I
Oh my
was.
God, I never said that.
Really? Oh, you're better than me. I
I
did.
think it, but I would never say that.
Yeah, no, I
Because
did. I
There's
did.
always that whatever can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah.
And so I will always say, there's a possibility that we may be able to negotiate that the seller pay for this, but you always wound up with.
But even with the
legal-
compensation?
Yeah, with
Okay.
compensation. You see it in the MLS.
Right.
And then you know that you will get paid, but in that agency
Right.
agreement, I always wrote.
Right, but I'm talking about prior, like 20 years ago when we didn't have
Oh,
that.
yeah, 20.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, but so like Jackie says, she always said now, and I agree. No, now I never would say that either. But yeah, we were,
And you see 20 years ago, it wasn't their commission or it was
Thank you,
compensation.
Teresa. So Teresa's saying, what am I saying about it wasn't their commission? 20 years ago, the buyer brokerage agreement, it didn't state basically anything as far as who paid what. It just had, this is the compensation. So now, as of 3 years ago, it said the seller will pay. And then as of 2 years ago, it said buyer is now responsible. But everyone kind of ignores that little buyer is now responsible part. You can't. And you better have a quick fix now to not say that.
Well, even though the listing agreement had the seller agree to pay a commission, the buyer was providing the money for the.
And that's and thank you, Jeremiah.
And so that was something that had to be explained when you're doing your listing agreement.
Absolutely.
And the buyer's point of view, especially if it was a buyer that was inclined to go looking for sell by owners, it's like we're giving the money,
Right.
So we want to get a cheaper property, so we want to deal with maybe deal with a seller that is not paying.
Right. No, I get it. So like what Jeremiah is
But
saying
it's like,
is,
bottom line is, people do not get something for nothing.
thank you. Like Jeremiah says,
Nobody does.
buyers were actually realizing that they were actually the ones paying it, even when we said the seller was paying it. And the bottom line is that there's nothing that's free.
And that commission amount was figured into the list.
And that commission agreement, that commission was amount already figured into the list.
Same thing when they go to subdivisions and they don't use another agent.
Correct.
It's like you just paid that agent twice. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Just like Jackie says, when you go to a new subdivision and you're paying them, you just paid them twice. It's and you went without an agent, you go, I don't have to pay anyone. But here's the thing, guys. I don't want to get too far into that rabbit hole. I'm actually going to have an interview with some very influential people on the 26th. Make sure you sign up on it's a Zoom call on the 26th at 11, where we're going to discuss specifically the NAR settlement, and that's with some very influential people that I know throughout the country, where we'll discuss more on that. But the main point I wanted to make on these negotiations is you're going to have to negotiate with the buyer, understanding that they are responsible. Do not think you can pick up the phone and call the listing and say, agent, and say, what are you paying me? It doesn't work that way. The listing agent will have to market it on their own website. That's the only place, and in the marketing that they do, that's the only place they will tell you if it's offered. That's as of August 17th. So,
Or focus your energy on looking for listings.
well, okay, so Jeremiah says, focus your energy on looking for listings. Listings have always been king. There's no doubt there. But here is what I believe, and this is just my opinion, is going to happen. I believe the listing agents aren't going to change the compensation. By the way, the word commission is going out. You no longer will say the word commission, it's compensation.
It's already said compensation in there.
It on some parts, but it's going to be out of everywhere.
Okay, so I have this listing here. Even though it says compensation there, I'm putting 3% there.
Don't talk numbers, please. One thing, guys, never ever speak numbers in a classroom. That is actually a Sherman antitrust violation.
Oh, okay. So can I put a number instead of just putting 0?
Okay, well, can you put a number on, are you talking your buyer brokerage agreement or are you talking your
I'm
listing?
Well, I'm talking about the listing. Like I put the listing on, right?
Right?
There it has compensation.
But it's going to be gone as of August 17th.
You mean?
And are you talking about the listing agreement or the MLS?
Well, in my listing agreement, I put number there.
Okay.
Okay.
But are you discussing what you're saying? Can I put a number? Is it on the listing, on the MLS? Is that what you're asking?
On the MLS, I do see compensation there.
Right now, but it's gone as of August 17th.
Okay, so then you told me if I'm listing a property, for my seller, me and my seller already discussed this, right?
Right.
I'm putting a number there.
Right.
Okay. So if I put on MLS and I list it, are you seeing, even though it's gonna be gone, I'm not supposed to put any number?
You are
just
not
put zero?
allowed to at all whatsoever. The only place you will be allowed to put it on is on your own website and on your own marketing.
Okay.
That is, you will not be allowed to put it in private remarks. You will not allowed to be put it anywhere else. There will be an additional field, guys, hang on one second. There will be an additional field that's gonna say seller concessions. And that seller concessions field, you can say your seller is willing to provide 6% in closing costs. Don't get carried away with it. We're gonna talk about your value. The truth of the matter, and this is where I need you to get not stuck on. I don't think, and that's a whole other class, so I'm not gonna go too deep into it. I agree with Jeremiah that listings are always king. I've always been a listing agent. However, there is a place for a buyer rep. And we have a great opportunity here for true buyer reps. But the only way you're going to get paid as a buyer rep is showing the value, and that comes through negotiations. Linda?
When you said she could advertise on her own flyer,
Yes.
is she allowed to put that flyer in the listing?
No. Great question. Linda says, can she do a flyer and then put it in the MLS? No, you cannot.
Not MLS, but inside the property, in the house.
Yes,
She's advertising,
yes,
so
yes.
she can do a flyer and.
Absolutely, yes,
Oh,
great
okay.
idea. Linda says you can put a flyer in the property with that the seller is willing to compensate for X amount. Yes, you can do that.
Okay.
Aisha?
You said the only place they can put the the
Compensation.
compensation is their own website, the agents.
Yes.
But I heard it never happened to me, but I heard sometimes they change the,
So
The
Aisha
number
says
of
sometimes
the
they'll change the
commission.
number at the last minute. We're gonna have to be, already we have that situation where people do that. Where all of a
Yeah.
sudden you think it's X amount and then by the end of it it's a
Yeah.
different amount. The reality is there's no way to police that. However, if Teresa, for example, had put a number down and then I came in with a buyer, never even bothered to know if her seller was paying or not. I didn't know anything. I send her instructions to closing and I say my buyer's paying and she says, yay, I get the full amount now. And we go to closing, she has now committed a code of ethics violation because she has to stick to what the seller's listing agreement says. So if she had put on the seller's listing agreement that there was going to be a co-op, she has to, when I send the instructions to closing, then say, your instructions to closing is wrong, fix that because my seller is paying.
So
But we're relying on people to be honest.
Yeah, the
how
seller.
is the buyer's agents going to know that?
Because you can't, okay, so great question. Teresa says, how are the buyer's agents going to know? You can't. You will not. You just have to get, and that's the mentality, that's the mindset that I want everybody to stop. Don't think your seller's paying anything. Simple as that. It is now and has been, but now it's going to be enforced, the buyer's responsibility to pay you. It's that simple. If you think of it that way, you're not going to get stuck on this all rigmarole because you're not allowed to call the agent and say, hey, by the way, what are you paying? That you're not allowed to do.
If you go to buy a car, if you go to the dealership to buy a car, you're going with the assumption that you're
You're
the one
paying.
that's gonna pay for the car.
Yeah.
So you don't go to the dealership thinking, oh,
What are you
my
gonna pay me?
salesman's
Yeah.
gonna kick in $5 grand
Right.
for me to take off of the car.
Exactly.
No, so realistically, you just have to think realistic.
Yeah, Lisa, I
You
love
can't
that.
go into anywhere thinking, oh, something's gonna be 50% off, something's gonna be for free, or
Right.
somebody's
Thank you.
gonna give it to me. So
And that's what
That's
we're
what
going to
I
learn.
think
I'm going to
about
stop the questions now because I want to get into the class. But what Lisa said is ideally perfect. We don't go into places expecting people to pay us when we're about to buy something. You just have to have that attitude. I love that, Lisa. So, 1 second. So, in order to do that, you just have to remember the seller is not responsible to pay the buyer's agent. However, if you in the listing agreement have decided that the seller is going to pay a co-op, then it's going to be up to you to put it in your own marketing. You as a buyer's rep are going to do what you can to search their websites. Guess what, guys? We're going to have more traffic to our websites. And we're going to be able to look at the website and say, okay, I see that she is offering it. Now I can tell my buyer. But if you have done the proper consult, because now I'm going to meet with Lisa before I ever show her property, so I don't even know who's paying what.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, Lisa, this is what you need to have in order to buy a house. You've got 6 to 9% of items that you're going to pay, including compensation, including negotiation, including admin, including mortgage fees. I'm just going to blunt it all in, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Don't get carried away. I'm going to stop because I need to get started. Park it.
I'm sorry, I just want to ask one
Sure,
question,
sure.
please. So in my listing, in the MLS, do I indicate a link that would
Nope.
take Mr. Buyer
Great
to
question, Teresa. Can she indicate a link? No, you cannot. That would be considered a code of ethics violation. And they are going to be very, very, very tough on it. That's one thing we were just talking about. I was on a national level call because everybody was asking every possible question. Can I put it in showing time? Can I put it in private remarks? Can I put a link? No. However, if I know that I'm going to show your listing, I'm probably going to go right to your website. I'm going to Google your website and look at your website and see what you have offered there. Your website's going to become huge, guys. I think it's a great time to really revamp your websites. One last question, then I got to get started.
The one problem with this is buyers have a hard time, and with this paying closing costs and down payment, now they're gonna have to pay the realtor too. I think it's gonna hurt the buyers.
Roberta says the one problem is that it's going to hurt the buyers because buyers already have no money. I tend to disagree with that. By the end of today's class, I think you will too. Because of the fact that they're already, like Jeremiah said, already paying it. So the reality is, it's not like they haven't. They already had. So the reality is you're just going to have to learn how to negotiate it to the point where they're not seeing it that way. But that's what the news is throwing out there. The news is throwing out that the seller doesn't pay anything, and that the buyer is going to pay everything. And buyers are freaking out, sellers are happy, but they don't realize that if they really went that way, then they wouldn't get anything either. So it's not going to be a win-win if they look at the narrative that way. So what you need to understand is the value. That's where it all boils down to, is in the value. What is negotiation truly? Negotiation truly is simply what?
Agreement.
Agreement, sometimes, not always.
We're trying to.
Coming to reach an agreement,
Coming
says
to
we're in
an
line.
Meeting of the minds.
Meeting of the minds, sometimes. Discussion. So what is all that? Communication. What negotiation is communication. It's effective communication skills. So for instance, see if anyone's heard of this. You didn't know you were doing math today, right? What do y'all think that means? Anybody seen that before?
No. No.
Okay. Well, and I'm just trying to find a new thing for my. I don't know why it's not working. So the communicate the 738 plus 5 or 55 equals 100%, right? Well, the 100% is all our communication skills. If you are looking at the 7%, well, let's ask you this. Well, how much of the verbal communication is important? What do y'all think?
100.
Huh? 55? What do y'all think?
I'll go with the experience lady.
So, actually, these are words. This is verbal. It's actually the least, but you know what? What you said is exactly what everyone thinks. So 55, whoops. I just skipped over it. Is the verbal. What do y'all think 38 and 55 is?
55 should be written.
What was that?
Yeah.
Okay, actually this is tone. And what do y'all think 55 is?
Intention. Body language.
Which technically could be intention. So this is a key mathematical thing that most communicators study. This is very, very important when it comes to communication. Because the public, the general public, always has the thought process that it is the 55 that's important, the verbal is important. However, that is the least important of all three. So back in the day, remember when we used to negotiate with people face to face? I thought it was way more effective. I loved it. What are we missing on Zoom even? Because on Zoom we see the person just like we would if we were across from them in a table, right? There's no difference there. But what we don't have is the energy that we can't duplicate through a screen. That energy comes from tone and body language. We get a little bit from Zoom, but not truly, right? When you have the tonality, if I said to you, what do you think about my dress? It's going to sound different than if I said, what do you think about my dress? Right? So the tone of your voice, or if I said, I can sell your home, or I say, I can sell your home, right? The tone and the body language is going to make a huge difference. That's why certain people we are attracted to, and certain people we just go, oh, geez, no, right? So with that, it's important that we understand the factors when it comes to this 738.55. That is a basic. Now, it's not a hard number. There's some people that, really their verbal kind of overtakes, and there's different factors. But the basic, the basic thing in negotiations is that there are 3 three types of people. You've all heard of the DISC, and you've heard of all the different personality facts or personality tests. But in negotiation, they don't use DISC. Negotiation, we don't use the same factors as we use for other sales tactics. Negotiations, we use these three. There are assertives, there are analyticals, and there are accommodators. And I'm kind of, oh, I apologize, I thought I put my phone on silent. The other thing that we do with negotiations is that we also get to the point where we do what we call mirroring. Now, we have all heard of mirroring, right? What do y'all think mirroring is?
Mirroring?
Duplicating? Who said that? Lisa said duplicating? What was that? Somebody else said something?
Duplicating was that.
Jackie says duplicating what that client said. Well, that is what we taught mirroring is, right? I'm going to teach you a new kind of mirroring. Jeez. When it comes to mirroring, in negotiations, it means mirroring with a little bit different factor than just duplicating body language, right? Because if I teach you mirroring for just a normal mirroring, I'm going to say, so Roberta, how you doing today? And if she's talking very softly, I'm going to talk very softly. And if I go over to Louise, and Louise is super hyper, hey Louise, how you doing, bud? Right? I'm going to change my tonality, I'm going to change my body language, I'm going to change all that. That's not what I'm referring to. Not telling you not to use that, Mary, because I teach you that all the time. But when it comes to negotiation, it's more of just repeating 1 to 5 words max of what the person said. So, for instance, BJ, what'd you do yesterday? Or can somebody tell me what they did yesterday?
Yeah, I went to the gym for a couple of hours.
A couple hours?
And I talked to some friends on the phone.
On the phone. The reason, obviously, it's not as effective when I'm just talking those few things. Now, it's not paraphrasing. So it's not you say, oh, so I understand you talked to some friends, you went to the gym for a couple hours. That would be paraphrasing. But when you talk about mirroring just the last couple words, the reason for that, and I take a lot of my information from Christopher Voss. Has anyone ever heard of Christopher Voss? He is like the top negotiator. He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. Definitely recommend that book. What Chris Voss talks about is he talks about an example one time he was doing a seminar, and he told his son who works with him, hey, we've got to get the notebooks ready for the class, for the seminar. So his son's getting what he thought were the notebooks, because we all have different perceptions of things. And Chris comes in and goes, son, did you get the notebooks? He goes, what notebooks? He goes, son, the notebooks for the class. He goes, for the class, the notebooks. And they were like just mirroring each other. Finally, he's like, the 3-ring binders. And he goes, oh, Dad, when I think of notebooks, I think of duotanes. So they had 2 different ideas of duotanes. And they figured this out through mirroring each other, because when you mirror, you get more description, more answers. So if he said, notebooks, he's like, yeah, the notebooks for the class. Yeah, the 3-ring binders. See, he expounded on what he meant. And we do the same thing. So you'd like to move by, who wants to volunteer to be my guest? Okay, Lisa. So you wanted to move by August, is that correct?
Somewhere around there.
Somewhere around there? What was the reason you were moving?
The kids are going to college.
Oh, going to college. What a great time.
So I just need to downsize.
Okay, so now she already expounded with me just repeating the first time. She said, so I need to downsize. I didn't even ask her what was going on. She said, because the kids are going to college. And I said, going to college? She goes, yeah, so I need to downsize. It's a natural progression, and it's not us mocking them. The reason I stated that before I talked to you about the assertives is assertives, if you have an assertive person and you mirror them, you're going to get the entire life story from them.
Yeah.
And they're going to tell you more than you even need to know. If it's an analytical, they're going to give you a 1-word response. And they might get a little annoyed with you mirroring it. And that's okay, because that's still a response and that's still expounding. You're getting to know that tone. You're getting to know where they're coming from. And then the accommodator is all about relationships. So, like Lisa's would have been almost an accommodator response. I don't know you well enough. You're probably more on the assertive style, but with the accommodator, you know, they would tend to be more relational. Oh, they're going to college, and then, you know, I need to downsize. I'm so nervous. Oh my gosh.
I'm that way.
Huh? Yeah, you're assertive. That's an assertive. So with that, that's kind of where I'm going with that particular. No, and you can study these online. Like I said, what I normally teach is a 12-hour course, but I wanted to give you a couple things about it. Let's see if this is going to work. Yay! Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the key principles, Master of Art, a strategy to overcome negotiation challenges. And then, what do you guys think is most effective? Who can tell me? Well, the most effective, I'm going to tell you, is in
Video
person.
conference.
Video.
So video conference would be number 2. Video conference is the closest we can get. We will briefly speak about text and email because unfortunately we're in an era where we do a lot of our negotiations via email, don't we? Unfortunately. As much as I don't like it, that's what we are in a world of. So we have to understand that. Negotiations are emotional, right? So we have to understand that. We need to understand that we are building long-term relationships with our clients. Some of these people are going to be our clients forever. And we need to know where they're coming from. We need to see if their decisions are based on an emotional they're probably going to be very passionate. But even if they're, say, a type A analytical, there's still emotion involved. So we always think of the fact that there's an emotion. There is something that Chris Voss also talks about in the book. If you go to a board meeting, or has anyone ever been in a lawsuit or any type of legal situation where you've had to go to court or a mediator or anything? Nobody? Yeah, Lisa? So normally you'll come in, the lawyer will sit at the end of the table, even think of a closing for that matter. The lawyer's at one end, buyer is sitting at another end, buyer's agent sitting at that end, seller at that end, seller's agent at that end, right? We think of each other instead of collaborative as enemies or conflict. Obviously in a closing, it's not the best example in that sense, but he talks about a board meeting he was called into for 2 different sides, and there was 8 people on each side. And he goes, and I made the mistake, I didn't realize all of a sudden all the people on this team were on this side and all the people were on this team were on that side. That does not invite collaboration. The best way to collaborate, and think of this for listing and buyer presentations, do you normally sit across from your buyer? Sit next to them. Stop sitting across from your buyer or your seller. Instead, come next to them and, hey, Jackie, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell your house, That way you're right next to them and you've created a collaborative relationship rather than a controlling or conflict one. That's one of the strategies. I know I've been mentioning Chris Voss a lot, so I'm going to mention who he is a little more so you understand. He was the top international hostage negotiator for the FBI. So he's got a little bit of experience with life and death situations. So yeah, if you go on his videos, you'll see a million things. He's amazing.
Just spell his last name.
VOSS. Yeah, he's really, really good. Never split the difference. That's the biggest one. So we need to understand where that person's coming from, right? We always tell you to understand the motivation of a buyer or seller, but you need to understand not just the motivation, but the passion, the emotion, the reasoning behind it. By understanding that, you're going to get a lot further. Because if I said to Charles, so you want to move to Florida by August, right?
Correct.
And he says, correct. And I say, okay, wonderful. So we need to sell it by August, right?
Yes.
Okay, but I haven't really connected with him, right? So what are you going to do in Florida?
Go fishing.
Oh my gosh. So, you know, Isla Mirada is the fishing capital of the world. Are you going to be anywhere near there or be able to visit?
I hope so.
Awesome. So, do you have an agent already in Isla Mirada?
No.
Oh, so I'm going to have to refer you. I've got the best agent in Isla Mirada. So now I've just gotten not only the business, but I've created a relationship, a rapport, because we need to build rapport. We tend to get so business, like, why do you want to sell? When do you need to be there? What kind of rooms do you want? But let's understand why. Because if you tell me you want an open floor plan for a house, but I don't understand why you want an open floor plan, and we're having a difficult time finding that open floor plan, instead, if I know that he said he wanted an open floor plan because he just likes the big windows, I can now say, you know, I have this house, it's not an open floor plan, but it's got wall to floors, ceiling to floor windows. So it gives you that impression of an open floor plan. Would that interest you? You know, so now I know the motivation as to why. We tend to stop short of the reasoning. So we need to understand what the reasoning behind is. And here's the biggest thing. The reason we don't make deals, well, how many of you have had a deal that didn't go through? If you're not raising your hand, you just haven't been in business long enough. But yeah, we've all had deals that didn't go through. And usually the reasons we don't make a deal are more important than the reasons we do. I'm going to say that again. The reasons we don't make a deal are more important than the reasons we do. What I mean by that is there's something called loss aversion. That we as humans have a fear of loss. So if we have a fear of loss, we tend to have that emotion even stronger in the fear of loss than winning. Right? You know, I'll use the example of, I don't take offense if you don't follow me, but I'm a Christian. And as a Christian, we pray, right?
Yes.
And when we pray, we tend to pray more when? When we're in trouble. Versus every day when we're grateful. Because we have that need, that desire, that emotion, that gut, right? So it's the same thing with anything, with business. We tend to have that fear of loss. It's the same reason we don't pick up the phone when we know we should, right? To make phone calls. We don't want to get rejected. There's a loss aversion. So, and you know, we place a greater importance on if we lose $5 than if we gain $5. You know, you might have got, hey, I paid you $5. What did I do with that $5 bill? I can't believe I lost it, you know? You tend to have that loss. We feel it more. So we need to understand that the fear of loss sometimes is what's squashing the deal. What I mean by that is if Louise says to me, I want to sell, but I don't want to sell till September because I'm afraid I won't have somewhere to go. Now we know it's his fear of loss, of being homeless, right? That was during COVID, right? We had that fear of being homeless. So now we can deal with that and squash that fear. I don't want to pay for a realtor because I just don't know if it's worth it. Okay, let's deal with that. We need to not be scared of the fear of loss, but rather understand where it's coming from. And by the way, anybody ever gotten an injection? Yeah, right? Or a shot? Or have you had my son's had a dislocated shoulder and they've had this, put it back in place. It looks so painful. So when they went to do his shoulder, I'll use that as an example. They said, okay, Tony, brace yourself. It's going to hurt. So then they did it. And he said, that wasn't that bad. Because what do we do when we say brace yourself? This is going to hurt. Well, we tense up, we also prepare, right? We prepare for the pain. They're about to take your blood. Okay, you're going to feel a little pinch. And then, it wasn't that bad. But if I just came up to you and pinched you, that would be bad. You know, I told you my grandson's a type 1 diabetic, so he gets a pump and he's got a CGM, which is a glucose monitor, and a insulin pump that he wears. One of them gets changed every 3 days, one of them gets changed every 10 days, and he just turned 6 Sunday. So, poor baby, it hurts when that happens. And he's had it since he was 11 months old. So, he's not used to it. I will say he still runs from it. It hurts. Because what it is you put it on here, then you prep it. It's actually all monitored with the phone. You hit that, and it goes, and it's almost like a stapler. It goes right in. And it's a needle that goes in. But prior to that, he would have to get about 20 to 30 shots a day. So, yeah, so it's better that it's only once every 3 days and once every 10 days, right? But he's gotten older. He's now 6, and we just said, "Hey, Jax, it's time to change your pod." Okay. So he preps himself. Yeah, I mean, I hate it, but I'm so thankful for technology. So with that, he's able to prep himself for that quick sting. And he's now to the point where he'll have mommy video him and say, "Look, I'm so brave," The reason I share that story is that when we are about to tell the seller that thinks their house is worth $600,000, but it's truly only worth $500, and it's going to sound harsh, but it's not going to sell for $500. We tend to avoid that conversation, right? We don't want to have that conversation, but yet we can't change reality. So we have to have that conversation. But it is smart to prep them. Lisa, it's going to sound harsh, but there are no sales that will justify the house selling at $500. And us A personalities, we tend to not have that much of a problem saying that.
Zillow said.
Oh yeah, Zillow says, Lisa, yeah. We tend, my husband says, "You have no feeling, hon." It's not true. It's just that I'm a realist. I'm a type A. But my husband is more of that emotional, relationship-based person. So for him, it's like, "Oh, I feel your pain." He feels your pain. He's very empathetic. So we have to be able to use that fear with tactical empathy. So even though us A personalities have no problem saying, "Lisa, you're crazy, your house isn't going to sell for $500, that wouldn't be very tactical, right? And it wouldn't be very empathetic. So instead, I'm going to be like, "Hey, Sean, I hate to say this. I know it's going to sound harsh, and I feel bad saying this, but the reality is, so I can prep her a little more and be more tactically empathetic." Now, if I'm talking to another A personality, I might not be because they might not even appreciate me being that tactically empathetic. So you're going to get to know that as you keep going in your business. But understanding that most fear of loss is what is driving the person to not do something or to not make a decision is going to help you in analyzing what is behind that no. Because we tend to just stop at no. "Oh, you don't want that market analysis? Okay, fine." No. Why don't you? Try to get those answers. And I'm going to show you a couple techniques on how to do that. And that is through listener's judo. Anybody know what listener's judo is? Listener's judo is really the key to communication. Communication, we said, 7% is only verbal. Only 7% is verbal. The communication that is key in negotiations is listening. It's listening and hearing. The listener's judo is listening for those reasons. So we've now talked about the fear of loss. Now we have the listener's judo where we're going to try to listen for those reasons. Kind of like when I did that little role play with Lisa and I said, "Why is it that you're moving?" "Oh, I'm moving because of college." And I'm still listening. And then she said, "I need to downsize." That was part of listener's judo. Saying, okay, so the real reason there is, so what I hear you say is that you need to downsize. So that's where we're going to be doing that listener's judo, just really, really paying attention. And when they are talking, and we aren't, we get to find out a lot more. We get to find out what their reasoning is, what their passions are. Maybe if there's a rocky relationship that's causing this sale that they haven't shared with us. Basically their pain points, their drivers. So between the lines, the adjectives they use make a difference, right? If it's an expired and you're dealing with an expired, and they're like, well, you know, I don't think I want to sell. So you don't, so what I'm hearing you say is you're gonna stay in this home for the next 20 years. Well, no. So, you know, you just kind of keep listening for those answers, especially with expires, because they're gonna eventually tell you what they disliked about that agent. You don't have to straight out say, so what did you not like about your last agent? Because they're not gonna tell you. Or if they are, they're gonna tell you bits and pieces. But if you start analyzing the answers to the questions that you ask, that are more like, what would you like in an agent? They're gonna tell you all the things that that other agent didn't do. If I just said, so Luis, what would you like in an agent? You're just gonna tell me, well, I want an agent that communicates, so the other agent never called. I want an agent that's gonna do open houses. Well, I don't want, and I'll deal with, no, I don't wanna do open houses later, but I can hear, okay, so he obviously is one that expects me to do open houses. You know, you're gonna hear the answers in the question that you didn't ask him. So those are important to understand. So if they tell you, if I make a point to say how I am for ethics, then chances is I've been burned before. Like the word honestly. You know, honestly, Jackie, I think, what does honest, when people say honestly, what does that infer? Were you not being honest before?
No, she just, maybe they don't wanna take you on a BS circle.
Lisa says maybe they don't want to take you on a BS circle. Actually, the reason I said that were you not being honest before is because that's like 90% of the people will tell you that. But it's not always the case. So sometimes they are being honest, but it has a bad implication when you say that. So that's one of the words that people listen for that are like, ooh. But if Jackie said, honestly, I'm not sure I want to list right now, I'm going to know there's something behind that. And additionally, the other thing we hear about is body language, and we said 55% is body language. They always tell you if people are like this or closed, right? They could be cold. So you got to be careful, and that's why listener's judo is really much better than all the other things. Now, kindness is huge. Anybody ever call customer service? Anybody ever hate calling customer service? But has anyone ever loved calling customer service? We've probably had both, right? No? Oh no, I'm so sorry, Lisa. But there are good customer service agents out there.
Yeah.
And how about a restaurant? Have you gone to a restaurant where you've had good service? You know, and you tend to go back to that restaurant, right? When you have good service.
And ask for the person.
And Jeremiah says, and ask for that person that served you the original time because you were so impressed with that service.
I have a good tip on dealing with customer service. Because, you know, most of the time you call customer service, you have a bad attitude. And that's why most customer service people have a bad attitude. Because they deal with bad attitudes all the time. And if you call and just say, hey, how's your day? I've got I do this with the IRS. I've been dealing with the IRS so much lately because they're so disorganized.
Yeah, they are.
And you just be so nice to them, and they actually make things happen for you.
And when you call them and are friendly to them and you ask initially, could you tell me the name of your supervisor? Then they pay attention to everything else that happens.
Well, like
But you don't say it
in a bad way, nice way. Well, like Ed said if you treat them with kindness from the start, you might get a different attitude. Or like Jeremiah says, asking him for their supervisor's name from the beginning in a nice way, they might be like, oh, he's going to call and maybe give praise. He might be saying it the other way, but if you're saying it the nice way, they might be thinking that. Both those things go right to the point of kindness. We have to start with kindness. Remember what your mom always said, kill them with kindness, or you get more with honey than with vinegar. Thank you. I'm Latin, so I know I learned it, but later. So it is true. You're going to attract them with honey. You're going to attract them with kindness. Being a jerk isn't gonna help. You know, just like we used the role play of, okay, well, your house isn't worth $500,000. You're crazy. I just don't even want you listed. That's not very nice. But explaining, oh, Roberta, I so want to sell your home. I wish I could sell it for $500, but the market's selling us 400. You know, she's gonna be a little more receptive. So kindness is huge, and it's huge in so many levels. Be nice and be surprised, like Ed said. Be nice and be surprised. The nicer you are, the more you're going to go. Where we're going needs to be established from the start. From the start. Stephen Covey, everybody know who Stephen Covey is? What does he say? Start with the end in mind. Always start with the end in mind. I teach a lot about business planning. I teach a lot about things like that, about business goals and objectives. Because I'll say, and I'm going to ask y'all, how was your business last year, guys? Who can tell me? How was your business? Say, you know, good, bad. Who can tell me how their business was last year? It was great, Jackie. What percentage of an increase did you have in your business?
It wasn't an increase. The year before was great, so it was like leveled off.
Okay, so Jackie says it was leveled off, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, but the reason I said what percentage is because you should know what percentage up or down you should have. You should know if you met your goals, because if you tell me it was great, based on what? Based on what?
I learned a lot.
I learned a lot. Yeah, based on what? If you don't have an objective and a goal, and you say, okay, I want to sell 50 homes this year, so now I know I sold 55 homes, or I sold 50, I met my target. You need to know where you're going, so that when you tell me, I'm in a good place, I did a great business, really? What percentage did you increase? You better know that, guys. You're running a business. You think that if I go to a top corporate company like Apple, or if I go to Chick-fil-A and I say, what percentage are your sales up? They know. Why don't you know? You know, every single one of you needs to know. Knowledge is power, because it's going to bring you into a better place for negotiations. So, for instance, if I said to you, what is the average sales price in the whole entire FMLS area right now? Sandra? Oh, I'm like, I'm going to be really impressed and happy. I was going to be really, really happy. Nobody knows?
$475.
$399 as of yesterday. So you need to be studying those markets every single day. You have free resources in FMLS and GMLS where you can go to the market stats and see exactly what it is. In Lilburn, it's $395. In the whole entire FMLS area, it's $399. In any homes 600 and above, the main price, the average price point is $695. The days on the market went last year at this time of year were 7. Today they're 76. Did you know that? But yet we still have a good sales price. We still have the same average in price as we are remained at 100% of list is sold. Do I sound a little more knowledgeable? So if I'm going against Roberta at a listing appointment, I said, oh, Roberta, or I'm listing somebody else's home, and I'm like, hey, yeah, you know, your house is great. You're right within the average. You know, the average price point is $399. The average days on the market right now is 76. So unfortunately, that part isn't as good as last year where it was only 7. And Roberta comes in and says, I can sell your house at $400. And she says, well, what's the average sales price right now? Well, it's a good sales price. You know, you need to know these things, guys. They are entrusting you with their financial investment. You know, it's no different than if I went to a doctor and said, I just had surgery 2 weeks ago. I was in the hospital. Some beautiful women here were helping me out throughout this time. Yeah, she watched my baby puppy, who is 100 pounds. But when I had surgery, I had a situation because I don't react well to anesthesia. So this doctor came in, and we negotiate daily, guys. Remember, even in this scenario, this doctor came in and said, I'm about to do an operation. I had to have 2 operations. The first one, he comes in, he goes, I'm going to be your anesthesiologist. Do you have any issues with anesthesia? I said, yes. And I explained to him my issues with anesthesia. I said, but my son has this, which is called malignant hyperthermia, if anyone's ever heard of that, but you basically have a bad reaction to anesthesia. I've never been diagnosed with it, but I've had some issues. He goes, ooh, and he stops right on his tracks. I have to treat you the same way as your son because that's genetic and you haven't been tested. I said, oh, okay. So all of a sudden, he explained to me that he was very familiar with the situation, told me everything his knowledge was. I felt so at ease, and I had such a great surgery, as great as you can. And then I had to come back for the second surgery, which started not so well because they took me in a day before they said I was going to be operated, brought me down from my room, get down there, and the girl at the front desk says, "Uh-oh, you brought down the wrong patient."
Whoa.
Yeah, that was another story. But I was like, okay, what was that patient in for that you just brought me down for, right? So already I'm not feeling really good, right? And then I hear the doctor come in and he goes, "Oh, I'm not operating on Bella Petalotti today. Her numbers weren't right. I'm going to operate on her tomorrow. But let me check her numbers. If we can, we will." And I'm like, okay, this isn't good. And I'm overhearing all this. But at least it was the same doctor, so at least I knew he was doing the same surgery. Then he comes in. I said, "Am I good?" Now I'm hesitant. I'm like, "Are you sure you should operate on me today?" And he goes, Yeah, you're good. I said, "Okay." My husband's on his way. I've already called him. And then I said, "Who's going to do my anesthesia?" And he goes, "This woman," gives me a whole other name. And then he goes to the next room. They really need to have soundproof rooms. Because then I hear him going, "Yeah, she's got her son that's got malignant hyperthermia. She's had issues with anesthesia." And she goes, "Ooh, I don't know a whole lot about that."
Oh.
And I'm like,
No ma'am, no ma'am.
okay, I'm about to freak out.
Nope.
So my husband walks in, I'm telling him the conversation, and he's like, okay, I'm about to go say something. Meanwhile, the first anesthesiologist walks in, and he goes, "I'll be your anesthesiologist today." And I'm like, what? I'm confused. He said it was going to be this other woman. He goes, "I took the file."
Thank God.
And I was like, whew, I can breathe, right? My point being that his knowledge of it and my first experience with him was very good. So now I was very hesitant with that next experience. So we want to present so much knowledge and ability that we don't have a doubt. I had no problem after that anesthesiologist walked in, right? I was like, this is cool. So we need to know what our end is from the beginning. Our goal is, in my case, the story I gave you, to come out alive. And in our story for negotiation, to make that deal happen. So we want that to happen, and we need to understand that's our goal. So when we think of business plans, our business plan is to have a successful year with 50 transactions. That's our goal from day one, right? Our goal in negotiations is going to be whatever it is in that case. It's going to be to get that house sold or to get that buyer approved for that home. Now, going back to the kindness part and implementing it in here, let me tell you, is it Maya Angelou or Anne Rand? Now I can't remember. I believe it was Maya Angelou that said, "People will never remember what you said."
Never.
They never remember what you said. Remember, words are only 7%. That's it. But they will always remember how you made them feel. So Maya Angelou made that point, and I love it. It was Maya Angelou. Because that is so true, and that's why that kindness is so huge. So if I know that I'm going to get to the end, I want to get to that end, I want to be kind and make sure that if I'm dealing with Jackie as if I'm the buyer's agent, she's the listing agent, I want to make sure Jackie likes me. I want to make sure Jackie wants to work with me, right? So if I'm like, "Jackie, I can't believe that you were so difficult to get on that phone." Already, even though that may have been true, I don't know. I doubt it with her, but with somebody else, it may have been true, right? I'm not going to start my conversation with that. I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to remember what my end is. One of the issues I have using this end in mind is when we think of listing agreements, and I review listing agreements all day long, and I'll see listing agreements that say, in the special section, that say, if buyer comes unrepresented, I'm going to remove X amount from the commission. I hate that. I don't know if any of y'all use it, but who are you? Who is your end? Your end is to satisfy the seller's needs. Do you think that's really making the seller's needs satisfactory? If you are able to show that buyer, first of all, obviously, if Jackie's buyer calls me and says, "I want to see the property. Are you working with an agent?" "Yes, I'm working with Jackie." "Wonderful. Jackie can make the appointment." "Oh no, Jackie's on vacation." What is your name? What is her name? I'm going to call Jackie. I'm going to say, "Jackie, I realize you're on vacation." You're like, "Oh my gosh, I told him I'd show her on Monday." I get it, but you know what? I'm in the area. Would you be okay if I opened the door? I would ask her that, and then I would go and show it. Now, if I can't, I'm going to say, well, you know, I hope it's still available Monday. We do have multiple offers today. If we did, or, you know, I've had no offers. You're good to show it Monday, you know. So I'm going to have that communication with that listing agent because my end is to sell that property as a listing agent. It's not to make more money. I had a conversation with an agent yesterday that was we were talking about negotiations and seller concessions. And I said, if you've exhausted your seller concessions for the buyer, because there is a max, I hope you all know it. I'll quiz you guys on that. FHA, how much can you ask the seller for?
6%.
Yay!
Yeah.
How much can you ask VA?
No.
No, yeah, you can.
Oh, yeah, just
4, yay!
But
4.
For?
4. What about conventional with 5% down?
3.5.
3. And conventional with 10 to 20, depends, you can talk to the lender, but it could be all the way up to 9. So anyway, if you've already exhausted the seller concessions, I was telling this agent, you could instead just ask for the price to be lower. She goes, you know, I had a situation like that, but I didn't want to do it because my compensation would be lower. And I was like, ooh, I didn't hear that. Please tell me I didn't hear that. I said, are you a realtor? Because if you're not a realtor, if you're a real estate agent, then you don't have to abide by the code of ethics, though I hope you do anyway. But if you're a realtor, you do have to abide by the code of ethics, which says that even if it means as a financial loss to you, you have to do what's in the best interest of your client, even if it's a financial loss to you. So understand that the end is your client. It is not you. So be very, very, very aware of that. This is one of the quotes that I like to see show is that the last impression is a lasting impression. So we need to be careful with those impressions we leave with agents. We tend to disregard our relationships with the other agent on the other side, when yet we should be collaborating. How many of you guys send thank you cards to your clients after a closing? Okay, 1. How many? 2? Okay. Or you do something, you follow up with your clients. How many of you guys follow up and say thank you to the agent? Sometimes.
It's a relationship.
It's a relationship building business. And so if Jeremiah and I had it, as Jeremiah said, and if I had a deal with Jeremiah, I don't care if it was a good deal or a bad deal, I'm still going to send him a thank you card. Because I'm going to leave that lasting impression that he thought I was a jerk negotiator because I was so tough. Because I am a tough negotiator, guys. If you do a deal with me, you might cry at the end. But no, I don't even sell anymore, but my husband does. But when I negotiate, I'm a tough negotiator. And I have had agents like say, I'm not dealing with her, I'm only dealing with you, with my husband. I'm kind, I'm nice, but sometimes, you know, that fear of loss can get overwhelming. And so with that, if Jeremiah and I had a really tough deal, and he was like, man, that girl's a jerk, I don't ever want to work with her again, I don't care. I'm still going to send him that thank you card. And guess what? Jeremiah might get that card and go, maybe she's not as bad as I thought. That lasting impression is the last impression.
I know what to expect for the next
Or you might, and Jeremiah's like, you might say, I know what to expect. And there are some negotiators that I don't care, some agents on the other side that I don't care what you do, you're not going to satisfy. But usually, like, if they're kind or just tough, you know, because I have had agents that said, you were tough, but they still didn't dislike me because I'm not going to be mean, but I'm going to be tough for my client. And I've had agents say, wow,
That's your job.
That's my job. I'm doing my job. Like Jeremiah said, they will say, wow, you were a tough negotiator. Well, I was defending my client. I was working on behalf of
And you
my client.
made me a better negotiator.
Yeah, and you make the other person a better negotiator. You want to have that last impression be the lasting impression. Another thing that I like to say is the secret to gaining the upper hand in negotiations is to give the other side an illusion of control. How many of you guys are married? You know why I say that? I can tell my husband 1,000 times what I think we should do with that room. No. All of a sudden, you know what I think we should do with that room? Isn't that what I just said? You know, but I've learned from my negotiation training that I just kind of like, you know, honey, what do you think we should do with that room? What color? You know, I kind of guide him and negotiate. Now, Negotiation / manipulation can be a little tough because we can cross that line very quickly. So we have to be responsible. One of the conversations I heard with Chris Voss one time and another negotiator, he said, what happens when you have two experienced negotiators? You might have two experienced negotiators, and even think of it in a relationship, marriage, where you might have two experienced negotiators. You've got to have some rules of engagement, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But the rules of engagement can be tough because all of a sudden you have two negotiators that aren't understanding. If you have two competitive negotiators and they're not understanding or giving and taking a little bit, it's not a win-win. I disagree with the win-win attitude. There are win-win negotiators out there. I'm not a win-win negotiator necessarily. I'm a collaborative negotiator, which can mean the same thing, but it can also be a little bit more of a give and take, which ends up being win-win. But I just don't, the win-win gives the impression of everybody wins. No, it's more of a give and take. So more of like a marriage. And this is a great one because I'm going to, if I want Jeremiah to agree to maybe close a week later, I'm going to say, you know, did you see that, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a reason I might do that, but, you know, Jeremiah, it's going to be a really rainy week next week, and I know that my seller is really elderly, so I'm thinking we really need to think of some options. I'm not going to tell him let's close next week. I'm going to see what he comes up with and try to kind of think of some ideas, and eventually he might even say, why don't we just push it a couple days? You know, and I that's not necessarily the best example, but that's what I'm getting at, where I'm going to let him guide me.
My clients don't want to be wet either.
Yeah, your clients don't want to be wet either. So, you know, what are some options we might have, Jeremiah? Could we possibly think of, well, we could maybe see about a mobile notary. Oh, what about maybe close a couple days later? You know, I'm going to let him come up with that, even though I'm guiding him. Give them the illusion that they're in control. So basically, if you're being haggled, you're not in control. And you're not even giving the illusion of being in control. When there's haggling involved, you need to get to the root. So, and you don't have to raise your hand. I don't want to embarrass anybody. I don't want to say anything. But has anyone ever, and think of it to yourself, don't answer, reduced their compensation? Ooh, I got a lot of answers without even needing to. And if you haven't, has anyone ever been asked to reduce their compensation? Here's the trick. And when you think of it this way, that's what the never split difference is all about. I have yet in 32 years never ever done that, and never ever will. And thank you, Dennis, I'm proud of you. Never ever will. Haggling is usually a game. Haggling, hey Robert, I need you to reduce that compensation. It basically means something else. So it's not that they really care. Most of them that are asking you don't even need you to reduce the compensation. They just want to see that they've won, right? That they've got to that. But they're usually haggling because of one of two reasons. It's either a game for them, or you haven't provided enough value in your service. Simple as that. And I hate to be tough on that. It's gonna hurt. But it simply means you didn't provide enough value in your service. Because if I am telling you what I'm going to do for you, and I'm going to not overpromise, but I will overserve, and you see the value, you're not going to have a problem with paying. How many of you guys have Stanley cups, those drinking cups? Nobody in this room? I don't like them either. But I don't see the value in them. What about a Coach purse?
Yeah.
A couple of you? Yeah, a couple of you? You paid a good amount for that. How about a nice car? You paid a good amount for that. You saw the value in it. So you didn't go and try to haggle at the store to lower that price, right? So with that being said, we're probably one of the few industries that people haggle with. Keep in mind, we have 3.2 real estate agents in the country right now.
Wow.
Way too many. I joke around that there's more people with real estate licenses than driver's licenses. Doubt that's true, but we have 1.1 realtors. Now, we are losing about 6 agents every 20 minutes that are just saying, I'm done with this, because they're so scared of what's coming August 17th. Yay! I'm happy. But yes, I hear what you said, Kim. She said a lot of more money for me. Never, and that's a whole other class, but never make it about the money. More business for me, yes. Because if you make anything about the money, you're not really getting to that end in mind, starting with that end in mind. But the haggling comes from you not offering enough service. So if Ninoska says, hey, will you reduce your commission? No. Any other questions? That's my answer. It has been for 32 years.
Yeah.
99% of the time, they don't ask me again. And I still get the listing. Very, very, very limited times did I not get the listing. Because you will have those. You know, and I told you Chris was a hostage negotiator. He says about 20% of the negotiations he did, they wanted to be suicide by cop. There are agents, sellers out there that are not going to take you. They don't see any value in anybody. They just want them to reduce price. So those are the suicide by commission, in my opinion. But I answer no. Any other questions? And I go right into the next comment. And I have heard things from, it's my culture, other agents are doing it, you don't understand. So I'll battle a couple of them. It's my culture. There's a specific culture that I keep hearing that from. Most of my clients are that culture. And they pay full price of what I offer, what I pay. Yeah, it's saying see your value.
Yes.
That's all it is. And the next one is, well, everybody else is doing it. That's the other answer you hear, right? Well, I have an agent down the road that'll do it. Absolutely. And Kim, if that agent is so quick in negotiating the value of their own, the price of their own value, ooh, how are they going to be in negotiating the value of your home?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that is the truth.
Now I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna convince you to price your property to go up, not to come down.
Jeremiah says, I'm going to convince
And I'm
you.
going to do the same with my compensation.
Yeah.
So if you wanna pay a different commission, it'll go up.
Oh,
and we're
absolutely.
not coming down.
Did you take my ferry?
No.
Oh, okay. That's my fairy attitude. But Jeremiah says, I'm going to always negotiate to go up, not down. So, like, if they say, do you negotiate your commission? They say no. And I say, no, any other questions? I'll go, but the other agent said, if they're that quick to negotiate the value. Or my other answer is, absolutely I negotiate. We can, instead of this, we're going to go up, because then we can even do more marketing for your home. And then they're like, oh, I'm good. But I kind of base it on the person as to which way I go. However, we tend to, the haggling, like I said, comes from that lack of service. If you have the knowledge and the ability to really convince them that you are knowledgeable, you're going to pay. And let me start by saying that the issue with the August 17 change has to do with the buyer's reps and the seller's reps saying, wait a minute, or the sellers saying, why am I paying for the person that's working against me? The buyers themselves are saying, I don't want to pay for that person because I did all the work. They didn't even do anything. So the buyers aren't seeing the value in the buyer's reps. The sellers aren't seeing the value to pay for the perceived notion that the other person's working for them. So what could possibly, again, my opinion, not fact, but what could happen is that Jeremiah goes and lists VJ's home for the same price that he normally would work for, whatever he works for, whatever compensation he wants, and then in the co-op section puts no co-op. And says to VJ, the reason I don't recommend that you co-op is because this way I'm going to have more control on both sides, And when that buyer comes to me, I represent you fully. He's not represented at all. We're gonna get the most advantage for you. That's gonna be happening, in my opinion. And so the buyers are gonna become customers, and the seller's agent, in this situation, Jeremiah, is gonna be representing the seller, just writing an offer for that customer, getting the entire compensation, and that buyer's not even gonna go look for a buyer rep. So in order for that buyer rep to really have a value, you have to demonstrate to that buyer rep what that value is. Because now Jeremiah's buyer could, or the buyer that bought that house could technically get burned. And when he gets burned, he's gonna be like, oh geez, I should have had somebody on my side. And there's gonna be some burning, in my opinion. And then that's when they're gonna start looking for true, real buyer reps. That's where I see the opportunity happening. But don't, never split the difference, is the book that I told you about. Never devalue yourself. The minute you're reducing your compensation, you have devalued yourself. And yes, you're gonna lose some people. I'm not gonna tell you you're not. I've let lots of buyers go, lots of sellers go, because they weren't gonna pay me what I believe I'm worth. But I just had a conversation with a newer agent in our office that did decide to reduce her compensation because the other agents were doing it, and it was her culture. Those were the two reasons she gave me. So she reduced it. One deal. Great agent.
I have a
1 second, and I'll be right back with you. And she ended up reducing that compensation for that one deal. So the next deal, she gets a call. Hey, how much are you going to rebate me? And oh no, a totally different deal, because that person spoke to that person, and now the word is out. And that's what I explained to her. The word is going to get out that you did that, and that has been, the precedent has been set. So she's like, oh yeah, it's already been set. So she is at the beginning of her career, and she decided, I'm not doing this. And she said no, and the guys walked away, but she's getting really good deals now, really good buyers now, because she's standing firm. You cannot reduce your compensation or you've devalued yourself. Kim? Oh, Teresa, sorry.
I had a builder's agent doing that last month. I had a closing I was supposed to do. But the price came, the person went and came less.
Mm-hmm.
So he called me, the builder's agent. He's like, oh, Teresa, the price came less, so can your buyer, she's qualified for this amount. Can she still go ahead and she just gonna pay a little bit more difference in her closing costs? I said, no. Then he after about 30 minutes, he called me back. Well, are you waiting for us to split the amount? I said, no. And he well, we got another buyers waiting. I said, that's fine. This is our partner. If they can't, that person can less, they can't eat the difference. My buyer's not gonna do that. Right. I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, well, good for you.
After a while, he called me back. He oh, anyway, the builder is just gonna take over everything and manage. I said, of course, I know it was gonna happen.
Awesome. Like Teresa said, so it was a new build, new construction.
Yeah, new
construction. So new construction, and the appraiser didn't come in, and they were asking her to reduce her compensation and split, and she said no, and she stood firm. Absolutely. And FYI, if a realtor or real estate agent, ever asks you to reduce your compensation, or you ever ask another agent to reduce your compensation, all right, so obviously we talked about the haggling. You want to get to the root. I will say one last thing. Please don't raise your hand, park it. If you have a question, we can talk at the end of the class on it. But as far as buyer brokerage agreements, I had a lot of you come up to me at break. The buyer brokerage agreement already, at least in the GAR one, I don't do much with RE, but the GAR one already states that the buyer is responsible to pay. That is nothing new. Again, I'm going to rephrase the fact that nobody here in Georgia should really be that shocked, because we've already been doing things this way. But the difference is kind of going back to what Jeremiah said at the beginning, nothing's for free. So I keep hearing, well, the buyer doesn't have enough money. The buyer already was paying, guys. It was already in there. We're just going to have to voice it very differently. I'm going to say, use this example one quick time. You can talk to me about it after class. Hi there. But But in order to really understand why your value is being haggled or questioned, you can do this. As far as if I have we have a special guest here. Where'd they go? Let me introduce them. This is our owners of Maximum One Executive Realtors. This is Kevin and Monica.
How's Deborah as a teacher?
Wow, amazing.
Okay, if she gives you anything less than fabulous, you let me know, because that's all that's in her. She is absolutely done. Thank you for coming. And if she hadn't mentioned it, if there is a class or something you want taught, please let us know.
Absolutely.
Give us time, we will definitely get it. And our staff here is here to help you any way we can. But thank you for coming to our class. Thank you again.
Great to see everyone.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Y'all have a wonderful time.
Thank you.
So again, the issue with the buyer brokerage agreement that we're all freaking out about for no reason at all is, and I'm not saying all, because I know there's some of you that are, so let me not say all, but some of the things are the buyer doesn't have enough money. I'm going to very quickly, briefly show you how I present it to a buyer. I would say, okay, Teresa, I'm going to meet with you before I ever show you a home. They're going to call you and say, hey, meet me at that house at 123 Anywhere that I saw on Zillow, right? And you're going to say, absolutely, I'd love to make an appointment for that. Let's meet at the office. You want to see it at 3? Let's meet at the office at 2. And I'm going to go ahead and get everything set up. Oh, but I don't want to meet at the office. It is a safety policy in my office. You can use whatever you want. That's just one of the excuses I can give you out there. It's a safety policy for my office that we have to show up at the office or whatever you want to say. But I definitely want you to meet at the office. I want to show you a couple things, print out a few things in order to best represent you. So you're going to go ahead and meet with them. I'm going to call my lender right away if I haven't already established a relationship and say, be available. I'm going to sit down with them and say, look, I just want to meet you. My name's Teresa, my name's Deborah, whatever. And I just want to introduce you real quick. I'm going to put it in the conference room, whatever your office is. If you don't have an office, it's Starbucks. And I'm going to put it on the screen, show them what's out there. So you were telling me your needs and wants, that are the basic stuff, which that is a whole other story. But I would go into the whole consult. And then when we finally get to the bottom of it, before I show you, before I go out there, and it is in what I gave you in the handouts that are on the QR code. Oh, I don't have it in front of me, but in the QR code, there is a handout that is called Service Questionnaire. It has a set of 17 questions. In those 17 questions, I'm going to ask questions such as, hey, Miss or Mr. Buyer, is it important for you to know if there are other offers on the table if I'm aware of them? What do you think they're going to say?
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to ask questions like, is it important for you if I know that there's any planning and zoning issues? What do you think they're going to say? Yes. Is it important for you, for me to tell you what I think the value of the homes are in that neighborhood? Yes.
Yeah.
So it's 17 questions that are going to guide them to say yes. By the time you're done with those questions, I'm going to say, in order for me to do that, I need to, by Georgia law and by the Code of Ethics, if I'm a realtor, I have to have a written agreement. So that's already been in place. This is what you should have been doing. I know you're not, but here's the thing. Don't come to me and tell me I should have been paid because you didn't have a written agreement and they decided to go with somebody else. You have nothing. That is not procuring costs. So with that being said, I'm going to say, okay, now I'm going to get to the point of the buyer brokerage agreement. This is my promise to you. That's what I call my buyer brokerage agreement. This is my promise to you, and this is what I am detailing to offer you. Guys, we are afraid of the buyer brokerage agreement when you go to a gym and sign anything and everything, right? You're signing your life away there. You go to the doctor's office, you sign your life away there. You go, to certain clubs, anything, and you sign liability waivers and things like that. Why are we so hesitant about this, right? So we're going to go get to the point of this is my promise to you. And in the buyer brokerage, it says buyer, it doesn't say seller. Get that, guys. It says buyer is responsible to pay. Now, they are not double dipping, responsible to pay X amount minus whatever the seller is paying. So I'm going to explain that to them. And they're going to immediately say, uh-oh, I don't want to pay you anything. So my value is not worth it. You know, I'm going to say, so what I'm hearing you say So that's one of the key words I'm gonna tell you too that you can say is, so what I am hearing you say is that renegotiating and using my negotiation skills are very important. Well, so what I'm hearing you say is getting the most, lowest price for this home is not important to you. You see what I'm saying? I'm kind of guiding them to think about, well, yeah, it is. Well, this is what I work for. So I work for this is what you're gonna pay now. Because I am an expert negotiator, I am going to do my best to get the seller to pay some of the costs. The way I'm going to present it is I'm gonna say, but let's talk about what you're going to qualify for. Have you talked to a lender? No, I have one here available on the phone or in person. I'm gonna have them talk to them. I'm gonna step out of the room, by the way. Never ever be in the room when a lender's talking to them. That's PII, that's personal identifying information you should not be responsible for. If you're not aware, Georgia is not a fiduciary state, meaning you have no fiduciary as an agent, only as an earnest money holder. So, with that being said, I'm going to tell them, this is what, okay, I talked to Modern Home Mortgage, they told me that you are qualified for X amount, so let's say they're qualified for $500K, and the $500K, you're gonna go with an FHA, and the FHA, or we're gonna go with conventional, let's do conventional. We're gonna go with conventional, 5% down. So I'm gonna say conventional 5%, okay, and again, we're not even gonna think about if the seller's offering anything. Don't even take that out of your mind. And I'm going to say, this is what you need, Mr. Buyer. You need to come up with 5% down payment of your own money, or gift, or whatever you're gonna need. And then the closing costs involved are these, 6 to 9%. What this involves are admin fees, document prep fees, attorney fees, and I'm gonna go down and down the list. Additionally, and think through everything you need, title search fees, all that. And then I'm gonna also in there put negotiation fees, representation fees.
So you don't say compensation to agents?
No, I'm using representation because they're gonna see that already when I've gone through the other line. So I'm gonna say representation fees. That's your compensation. So I just kind of group it all in here. And I'm gonna say, okay, so it looks like you need about 32K. Oh, well, I only have about 29K. So I would say, okay, so you have 29K. We have a couple options, Jackie. We have a couple options in the sense that we could either ask the lender, you know, that's what you have, that's what you're gonna need to come up with, or what you have to work with. So what's the price point I should be looking at? And we can lower the price. Or we can take a chance, and I'm gonna use my negotiation skills to get this about 3% max, because it's a conventional, paid by seller in concessions, which is your closing costs. Keep in mind, August 17, we will have a seller concession field. So as we're looking at homes, we'll be able to already see what the seller is offering for concessions. So I may go in there and see that they're offering 5% concession, up to 5%. So whatever it is that they're doing, I'm going to show them that. So anyway, then I'm going to say, so that would cover that difference between the two. So that's where that solving issue would be. And so when they see that buyer is responsible for this amount, they're not as freaked out because they've already seen that. If they say, no, I don't want to pay you that. Now keep in mind, compensation is not a percentage. It can be, but it's not set in stone. You can choose to do whatever you want. And I believe we're going to see some different numbers. We're going to see some different retainer fees. We're going to see different things. That's all my opinion on what we're going to see happening. But with that, if you are truly showing your, I guess I erased it, but what I was going to say was, if you're concentrating on your features and benefits, you're going to be able to prove your value. By asking those 17 questions I first told you about, that's going to help you determine the value. Just like within the listing demonstration that I showed you where I said where Roberta and I were going against each other in a listing agreement, and I said, well, today, in all of the FMLS area, we have a price point of $399 as our average. The homes on the market are taking about 76 days, but they are selling at 100% list of sales. I sound educated. I know what I'm talking about. Whereas if Joe Schmo walks in and says, oh, no, then no, you're not gonna wanna pay him. But you're gonna pay if you see value. That's why the stupid Stanley Cup people see value in it, right? So, it's whatever you determine is that value. But that is what is key in understanding how you're going to do it. But don't get stuck on what is the seller paying. Forget that. Just forget that the seller's paying anything. If the seller does happen to pay, you're going to be looking really, really good. And I've been hearing, but people have been putting 0. If you put 0, that's the one last point I want to make on that. If you put X amount, you cannot get paid anything above the X amount. You can't get paid less, but you can't get paid a penny more. So be aware of that. That buyer brokerage agreement, that listing agreement, whatever it says, is the max that you can get paid. So don't try to get smart and savvy and tell the buyer that they're paying 0. Because if they're paying 0, you have no commitment. And additionally, if you have a customer relationship, customer acknowledgement forms are strictly agency related, they're not compensation. It doesn't guarantee compensation. Be aware of that. One last comment is the only time that you can put compensation into a contract. Because, well, let me back up. Who are the parties in a contract?
Buyer and seller.
Buyer and seller. That's it. That is it. So if the buyer and the seller are the only 2 parties in the contract, you cannot talk about compensation in there. That compensation has to do between you and your client. Brokerage agreements, buyer brokerage engagement, seller brokerage engagement. Those are the 2 only places that compensation gets discussed, with one exception. The buyer, I now meet with VJ, and VJ says, I want you to ask the seller to pay your compensation. You can't put it in their heads. And don't try to get smart and savvy on that one, because it's not a problem until it's a problem, right? And the day that something goes wrong, they're going to say, but Jeremiah told me to say that. No. If the buyer truly, out of his own desire, said, Jeremiah, I want you to ask the seller to pay your compensation, then there is an already written special step that you can use to do that. Up to 2 weeks ago, you couldn't do that for a VA buyer, and there was a special step for the VA buyer. VA buyers are now on the same playing field. The VA has lifted that. So VA buyers, as of 2 weeks ago, you could not pay compensation. But as of 2 weeks ago, VA lifted that. And I'm sad for the veteran buyers, but at the same time, I'm happy because it at least puts them on an even playing field, where before they were at a disadvantage. So just be aware of that. We all think of no as a bad word. And yet no should be our favorite word, right? Because if you are getting to a no, you're gonna get more information. Our instinct when somebody calls and offers you something is, no, I don't want it, right? That's our instinct. It doesn't mean a hard no. No is not a bad word. In fact, people fear and feel safe with the word no. Because you're in control, right? You're saying no. But that is the first step to collaboration, as per Chris Voss. And I agree. We are always taught to induce yes questions. He teaches to induce no questions. Because if you're getting somebody to say a no answer, you're going to get to the root behind it. And I'm going to demonstrate this with a couple things.
It causes the question why, and then that opens up.
Thank you. Jeremiah says it causes the question why, and that opens it up. So let's look at these top negotiating lines that Chris Voss has. Is now a bad time to talk? We are always taught to say, is it a good time to talk? And what's the answer usually? No. No. Is now a bad time to talk? Your instinct technically says no. It's like you don't think about it. You know, that is the instinct. And again, this is proven by him. And people kind of go, because it makes them think, no, it's not a bad time. It's just, I don't want to talk to you. But if you say no, like if you say, is now a bad time to talk, it actually clears their head and they tend to say, okay, no, it's okay. And be aware though, if they immediately say, yes, it's a bad time to talk, do we really want to work with them anyway? But they might say, yes, right now is a bad time to talk, and they're saying it with the tone, because remember, we have to listen for that tone. You say, would tomorrow, Tuesday at 4 o'clock work better? If they say, yes, that would work, then we've got an option. But instead of saying it's now a good time to talk, change it to now is a bad time to talk. Is it a ridiculous idea? I taught this same class in Alpharetta a couple weeks ago, and one of the agents called me back and told me she used this line, and she was like, wow, it really works. It really, really works. And it really does, because even if they're tired, they can say no, right? Because we all suffer from what we call decision fatigue. But right, by 3 o'clock, your kids better not ask you if they can borrow a car or do whatever, right? Because it's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. You know, it's like decision fatigue. So, but even when we have that decision fatigue, we are able to say no pretty quickly. So, you know, I'm sorry, what was your first name?
Mia.
Mia. So, Mia, is it a ridiculous idea to list your house this week? You know, it's like, you know, is it a ridiculous idea that we get together and strategize on how to best get you to Tennessee? Mm-hmm. Is it a ridiculous idea to get together for lunch and discuss the market value of your home? You know, you're kind of putting it in a position that, well, no, it's not a ridiculous idea.
Yeah.
And like I said, she did this, and she was like, wow, it really works. And she used it mainly to create her working lunches with possible clients. Instead of saying, is that the best recommended list price? You might say, is it a ridiculous idea to sell it for $600,000?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're kind of putting them in a position where it actually helps them when they have decision fatigue. So, and there's a lot more to it, but I'm just giving you real quick points. Are you against it? So that's another one. Are you against the recommended list price? If they say yes, you're going to hear them out, but you're going to get to the root of that problem. Are you against this listing price? And then if you keep getting nowhere, you might say, so what I'm hearing you say is I haven't built up your trust. So what I'm hearing you say is you don't trust me yet. Or what I'm hearing you say is I missed something. Because if you're not getting past those little hurdles, you have missed something. But put it on them to tell you what. Is it a ridiculous idea for you to commit to list your house today? Have you given up on? So you might have that client that keeps telling you, I'm going to list my house next week. No, it's going to be next month. No, it's going to be in 5 months. No, it's going to be in 6 months, right? So I might call Rosa and say, hey, Rosa, have you given up on selling your home? Or this is a great one for expireds. Oh, yes. You call the expireds. Hey, Kim, have you given up on selling your home? No.
Or for sale by owners.
Or for sale by owners. Have you given up on selling your home?
I love this.
Yeah. Have you given up on or you can use it as an emotional form. Have you given up on moving to Tennessee?
Yeah.
You know, you're putting it on them. Well, no, I haven't given up. So then what is the hurdle behind it, right? This is great for somebody that's ghosting you, or a FSBO, or an expired. Because, and sometimes, get this, guys. I was talking to my husband about this yesterday. A lot of times the reason we have to use this line is not so much that we haven't been staying in touch with them, but because we've talked to them too much. And I'm not saying stop calling, because you want to keep calling, but don't talk. Listen. Mm-hmm. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yeah.
But we seem to think we're backwards. So we look a little funny, right? So you want to make sure that you are doing it in a situation where you might be over pitching them. You might be overselling them. You might be doing some pressure selling. This is where this one's really good. Have you given up on it? It goes from uncertainty to certainty, by the way. The other one right here is, how am I supposed to do that? This is another one. I didn't bring it up at the beginning because I wanted to bring it on this slide. But if they say, are you going to be giving me a rebate on that transaction? How am I supposed to do that? Let them tell you. So if they say, are you willing to negotiate your commission? How am I supposed to do that? They tend to kind of go, uh-oh. Well, I mean, you could just give me, okay, how am I supposed to do that? 99% of the time they won't answer. This is one of his top hostage negotiations. He actually, if you go on the video, look up 60 Seconds or She Dies. It's a negotiation exercise he uses all the time. And he talks about this, how am I supposed to do that a lot, where he's talking to a thief, a bank robber, because that was his main thing, was bank robbers. And he was trying to talk a bank robber out of the bank, and they only have 60 seconds. He makes one person the negotiator and one person the bank robber. And basically, he can't exchange hostages, he can't give them drugs, he can't give them or alcohol, he can't give them money. So those are the rules. And then he says, let's start. And they put the clock up. And basically, the how am I supposed to do that is really good. One of the ones he uses a lot is the bank robber says, you know, I need a car and I need it in 60 seconds. How am I supposed to do that? And the guy answers and says, well, you have cars outside. Just bring it to the front of the bank, leave the door open, and I'm going to go in. He goes, so then he goes, so what I'm hearing you say is you don't want to live. And it kind of turns the corners, and the guy goes, well, no, I want to live. Goes, no, you're not giving me a chance. You're telling me I have to get your car in 60 seconds. So it sounds to me like you want to die. And he's turning the corners. He's saying what it sounds like. It seems to me. Those are all key comments. Instead of saying, you know, what is it that, or even the one that I gave you before on the negotiations where I say, okay, well, you know, anybody that's willing to reduce their value, how quickly are they going to be in reducing or negotiating the value of your home? That's a good one for some people. But for others, you simply are like, well, it sounds like to me that you want to get the most in your pocket, right, Lisa? Mm-hmm. Well, what you need is an agent that's a top agent that understands negotiation skills and understands how to get that top dollar for your home. Do we agree? You've totally averted that negotiation as far as the commission. Because I'm going to get to that root of the point. Lisa doesn't care about reducing my compensation. She just wants the most money in her pocket. So, you know, if I say, hey, listen, Charles, it sounds like to me that you want to have enough money to be able to move and retire successfully, correct? Right. Wonderful. So what you need is an agent that's going to sell your home in the quickest time possible and the highest price possible. Is that right? Perfect. Let's do it. You see what I'm doing? I am taking it right back to the root. Otherwise, we get stuck in the BS. Like Lisa had said at the beginning, we get in that BS circle. We don't want to go, well, Nicole, you see, and this is what caused the lawsuit, by the way, guys, part of it. You see, part of my commission goes to my broker. The other part goes to the IRS. Then I have to pay this, and I have to pay that. No, who cares? I don't care where your money goes. I just want the money in my pocket. Right? Yes?
Yeah. So you should set the selling price before this or after this, right? Signing the brokerage, so you talk about what's the listing price should be. Is that the after thing or?
Gotcha. So Aisha says, do I get the listing price after? No, I mean I wouldn't sign something that didn't have a price on it. I'm gonna have already discussed that. But you know, for me, I mean, as a seller, I wouldn't expect them to sign something without you have to have that already written in there.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be discussing this prior to, you know, you want to sell your house for X amount, da da da. And he says, well, I want you to reduce your commission. Okay, well, it sounds like you want the most money in your pocket, right? Okay. You're just going to go right to that route. Or, Charles, what would it look like if you were retiring fishing in Islamorada? How would your life change? Substantially. How exciting, right? So let's get this signed so we can get you there. We're going to get to that route. We're not going to worry about the BS of where the money goes here, the money goes there, and the money. That was literally part of the settlement of this lawsuit, because people were like, I don't care where that money goes. I just want the money in my pocket to matter. You know, people don't care. And guys, we're fearful of rejection, but guess what? They don't give you a second thought. Yeah, so who cares if you get rejected? No, I always say no means you haven't given enough information. No means that they don't understand. There has been something you have left uncertain. But that sets a boundary when you say, how am I supposed to do that? Well, you're just supposed to take half of your paycheck and give it to me. Charles, would you do that?
I don't think so.
So Charles, it seems like to me that you wouldn't do that, but you feel that I should. Am I not providing you enough value? All of a sudden he's gonna feel like crap, right? Well, no, I don't. You know, you're getting to that root. So this one, that is very generous of you. I'm afraid that just doesn't work for me. This is for that agent or that client that says, well, Roberta, I'm gonna list with you. And this actually, somebody just gave me this one yesterday. I'm gonna list with you because I know you're brand spanking new and I'm gonna be generous. I'm gonna go ahead and give you that listing, but I'm only gonna pay you X amount. Wow, that's really generous of you. I'm afraid that just doesn't work for me. What do you mean? My value's too important. So again, you're putting them on the spot at that point. Because they're now, and Chris actually uses an example of a big multi-million-dollar negotiation, and they were going back and forth, and somebody came in and said, I'm gonna offer, I guess, I'm just gonna use the number 10 million. They said, we're gonna offer 8 million. And Chris said, that's really generous of you. I'm afraid that just doesn't work for me. And shut up, don't keep going. That's the key right there, guys. After you do it, you shut up. After you say any of these, you shut up and listen. Because now, what happened in that specific scenario that he told us about, he said, that's very generous of you. I'm afraid that just doesn't work for us. And he shut up. And they were at a board table looking at each other. And then the guy goes, oh, that was a pretty stingy offer. How about we just go with 10 million? So they negotiated it up for themselves without Chris ever saying a word. That's a real life scenario because now that silence is going to be broken eventually. And if you keep your head on right, it's going to be by the other party. That's why I will send, when I was negotiating contracts, I would send a contract and I would say, this is my top offer for my, because I always tell the buyers, don't, just give me your top offer. I don't want to be, I'm not an auctioneer, I'm not a haggler. Just tell me what you're willing to pay for this house. You want this house? Just tell me what you're willing to pay. I'm going to make sure that it's the right price based on the comps and all that. But okay, you want to offer $500,000? I'll send it to Charles. Charles, this is our top offer, and comes back with a counter. Of course, I'm going to present it to my buyer. My buyer's going to be like, well, no, I don't want. And then Charles, I'll send Charles. I told you that was my top offer. Now, remember I told you we're going to talk about email a little bit. That's an email strategy, right? That's an email negotiation. So with that, we tend to send all sorts of stuff in our emails. Do you guys like receiving long emails? No. I have a friend that sends so many emails with 10 different colors and 5 million different paragraphs, and I get so annoyed. But yet we do that. We send an offer. This is for a family. They're so great. They're this, they're that. You just violated fair housing. But they, they're going to love this home. They're pre-qualified. I don't care. Just send me the offer. So if I'm going to send an offer to Charles, I'm going to send the offer. Offer's been sent. You should have it through Remind. This is their top offer. Let me know if it works. Or ATAX after an inspection. I'll get an inspection report back. They'll say, we want this, this, and this. And I'll say, Charles, I told you from the start, they weren't going to do anything. Let me know if you want to terminate. All of a sudden, Charles is like, well, it looks like, and I just leave it there. And then same with if I'm representing the buyer, they have to have these things fixed. Let me know if it works or should they keep looking at other homes. I don't think I have ever lost a deal due to negotiations. I've lost them for other stuff. But when it comes to negotiations, I have had, and it's not that I do anything that special. It's everything I'm telling you right now, just shutting up and listening. You shut up and listen. That is the number one thing I can tell you. But with that, that's a good one right there. The other one, how are you? How many of you get calls from salespeople? How are you? How are you doing today, right?
Yes.
You know it's a salesperson, and you're like, don't engage. Don't be like, hey, I'm doing great. The answer that you should always give is, sounds like you have a place to start. What's going on? You just took them and landed that plane. So even when somebody calls you, and A personalities love this, right? Because you call me and you say, how are you? Hey, Lisa, so you ready to sell yet? Sounds like you have a place to start. Now, every few blue moons, you might have somebody that really is interested in knowing how you're doing. And you might want to engage. You know, somebody calls you, hey, you know, Nicole calls you and says, how are you? And I said, sounds like you have a place to start. Hey, Deb, I heard you were in the hospital. How you doing? Oh, I'm doing great, thank you. So let's go back to that place you wanted to start in. I might still go back there. So you want to just land that plane. Our time is too valuable, right? But what that does is it gives them a mood, you get a mood indicator. Because it puts a salesperson kind of at I wasn't expecting that, right? It puts them in a defensive.
Yeah.
And yet, if they're not a salesperson, they really want to get something, you're also going to get that. You're going to find out that mood by stating that. Answer at Pearl simply means that there's always a question behind a question. You always have a question behind a question. I told you, get to the root. Getting to the root is the main thing. So like I said, a good example was one Lisa and I did earlier where, you know, what is your reasoning for moving? Well, the kids are at college. We still know. So you need to move because the kids are leaving? Well, no, I want to downsize. You know, so I'm going to get to that question behind the question. And if you ignore that first one, if she would have said, I'm just moving because the kids are going to college, it would have been one of those things that, like, I still don't have the answer as to why she's really moving. So if you don't get that question, you're ignoring it, basically. And that's not a good thing. Be careful when you ask it, because you can go into a rabbit hole. What I mean by that is all of a sudden, like in that same example where Lisa said, I need to downsize. Oh, wow, yeah, so you just have way too many bedrooms. What's going on? You know, you might end up in a place you don't want to be. Be careful with how you inflect, how you react, the curiosity. Don't get too nosy. Make sure that you're asking questions that will have a true answer. The other thing is also upward inflections in your tone of voice. That's actually an NLP course, a totally other thing, but what makes you ask is another really good one. You know, how's the market going? What makes you ask? All the time we say, oh, it's great, it's this, it's that. No, what makes you ask? Why are they asking? Interesting. Why? So all of a sudden you say, what makes you ask? You know, well, I just was curious. But,
don't you think you need to answer that question first before
No. Because if you're answering the question, you've already avoided the question behind the question. Now you're answering at peril. Because like Teresa said, don't you ask the question, answer the question first? No, because now you're going to go into that rabbit hole. Now you're going to be talking about the market instead of why they're asking you that. Because really they want to sell in a home. I want to get to that, why do you want to sell? So if Jackie says, how's the market? And I say, what makes you ask? And she says, oh, I'm just curious. Wow, well, it seems like you might have a good reason for asking. Now I'm kind of pushing her to give me that answer. No, I truly just wanted to know what the market was. Then I'm going to answer it. But if she says, well, I was thinking, you know, I'd like to know the value of my home, then now I can go, you know, I'd love to sit down with you, explain the market, give you a value of your home. How's Tuesday after 2 sound? Right? Yeah. Versus, oh, the market's great. Yeah, you know, the interest rates just dropped. Okay. And she calls somebody else to lease.
The reason I ask you that question, because if they ask me a question like that, normally what I do, I say, oh, okay, what's the reason? Is there a reason
That's
why
okay.
you ask? Because I try to answer kind of quick like that a little bit, and then I give it back to them.
But that's good. Say, what's the reason? That's exactly what I just said. No, Teresa, yeah, it's the same thing. If you're saying, what's the reason you're asking? That's the same thing. What makes you ask? What makes you ask? You're answering with a question, and that's giving that reason behind it. All too often, we fall in the rabbit hole and just tell them the stats of the market, and then they go, oh, wow, you know, I just met this lady in the elevator, told me some great stats, so I'm going to call this other realtor down the street. Whereas if I met her in the elevator and I said, what makes you ask? And I say, oh, so it looks like you want to sell. So it sounds like you're looking to move by August. Here's my card. Call me tomorrow. Let's set it up. You know, but I would have tried to set up the appointment already. Every place you meet is an opportunity. So you want to make sure that you're doing it. And then seems like you have a good reason for not doing it. That's another one, because if you have been also dealing with, same with that person that ghosted you, this is kind of along the same lines. They've been ghosting you, they've been like, you know, I'm gonna list, I'm gonna list, I'm gonna list, I'm gonna buy, I'm gonna buy, I'm gonna buy, and they're not doing anything. And then all of a sudden you say, you know, Kim, it sounds like you have a good reason to not list. Well, you know, I'm just waiting for the interest rates to drop. Now I know the answer to that. I know what I have to deal with. You know, and that has been a very, you know, during COVID, what was the main thing? Seems like you have a good reason not to list. What was the answer all the time? What? But COVID, it was, thank you. It's what Jackie said, I don't have a place to go. So then we could examine that. Is there anybody that you could move in with? Is there, what, you know, and I had a seller during COVID that he called my husband, he wanted to sell his house, and my husband said, I don't want you to be homeless, you know, because we knew, and he goes, but I'm okay buying anything, but I want to get the most out of my sale. So now we knew his reasoning. He goes, okay. So then we were able to find something that I knew wouldn't have been his top choice, but it was somewhere for him to go temporarily, and then he sold it again and got the house of his dreams later. But we knew how to strategize, because if we don't have the end in mind, we're not asking these questions, we don't have a strategy, then we don't have a plan. So this is to get them back on track. And I already told you this, but about 20% of the time, something's not going to happen. Giving you the example of the bank robbers, 20% of the time they're suicide by police. So it's not always possible. Don't get discouraged for that. It's important to understand that tactical empathy. We talk about that. I'm just re-emphasizing and bringing it up. And the tone of voice. The inflection of your voice is going to make a difference. We had role playing the other day. I hope some of my role players are role playing on their own. Are you? You better be. When we role play, we talk about inflection. You know, so I say, you know, when I'm talking about me, I'll point to me. If I'm talking to you, I might go like this, whether I'm on the phone or not, because it changes the way. Also smiling, right? Because if we're on the phone talking and we're just, hey, Jackie, you thinking about selling? Oh, well, I wanted to talk to you about the market. It's going to make a big difference. And hey, Jackie, how you doing? I'm Deborah with Maximum One, and I just was thinking about you today. And I said I was going to call you like I said I would. You know, and I want to make sure that you know that I'm here for any of all your real estate needs, right? It's going to sound very different than that lower inflection. Always, and I'm not going to do NLP a lot today, but it's part of negotiations, also understanding that with NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, what you're doing is you're going to, periods become, question marks become periods. So are you looking to sell today? Down inflection at the end. Are you looking to sell within the year? I'm asking a question with a period, and it gives you more authority than, are you looking to sell within the year? You're not going to be as interested, right? So it's one of those things that tone of voice is huge. And be cautious, and this is where you do want to think about the other person's tonality too. Because if I'm talking to somebody that's really quiet and I'm very loud, I'm going to really annoy them. And if I'm very loud and I'm being very quiet and they're loud, I'm going to lose them. So the mirroring we talked about again, remember just those last couple words, never more than 5 because otherwise it becomes a paraphrase. So the mirroring that I'm referring to is actually in the talking. And then labeling. When I was talking about labeling, it's quite simply, it sounds like, it seems like, it looks like. These questions will serve as qualifiers. So what you want is to be qualifying the intent or the root or the circumstance, the pain point, the driver for your client. You're trying to get to those points by, it seems like, Jeremiah, you want to get the most out of your house. You want to get the most money out of your house. It seems like, Louise, that the most important thing for you is to sell within the next 30 days. It seems like you really need to get to that fishing before the fishing season is over, right? That type of situation where I'm getting to those circumstances, and it's going to be a lot better than, well, if you want to go fishing, we got to sell that house soon, right? It seems like you're turning it around to them and giving them the impression that they're in control. And our minds have the ability, our neuro-linguistic minds have the ability to change how everything is. The power of no is that we're constantly taught to get to those yes questions. But that's not actually the case based on Chris Voss and really our minds. I'm by no means a psychologist or doctor or anything, but the no-oriented questions are the goal to get the prospect to say no instead of trying to get them to say a yes. And the no will trigger that safe feeling. Now we've got them in a place of safe feeling where we're going to examine to the point where they sign and the indicator to get them to that yes. We talked about the why questions a little bit. Jeremiah brought it up. It's the same idea. But Chris says why should never be in your vocabulary. You're using it with those other indicators, with those labels, because the why triggers a defensive response. Why is on guard. We don't want to be on guard. We want them to feel relational with us. It seems like, Ed, you want this. Or if I said, why do you want that? It's more defensive. We're still getting the same place. It's still technically a why question, but we're just not using the word why. People use why is the bad word. Same with how. Unless you're using it in the situations where the how is used in the sense of an open-ended question, encourages the collaboration. How am I supposed to do that? How would you like to see this happen? How would your life look like in 10 years if you were down in Islamorada? How would it look like if you got closer to your grandchildren? How would it look like if you got top dollar for your home? I'm going to turn it around to your real estate career. How would it look like if your real estate careers are so successful in 10 years? How will that change your life? That's what I use with my mentees when I'm talking to them about building their business plans, right? How is your life going to change when you succeed? Because now they can see the end and they realize what work they have to do now in order to get to that end. And sometimes they'll even tell you exactly. That's the funny part. If you say to somebody, how am I supposed to do that? They might actually give you a really good reason and indication as to why you can get to that. But so often, we as agents will lead with an offer instead of a conversation. What I mean by that is we might say, Sandra, I'd like to sell your home, and I know I can sell it better than anybody else. Okay, we've lost her. Rather than having that conversation to get to those answers. And then they're just going to decide on us. We don't even have to sell ourselves. They are the decision makers, not us. Remember, with our sellers and buyers, they are the decision makers, not us, right? All too often, somebody will send you an offer. Oh, they're not taking that, right? I will present it. Simple as that. When somebody sends me a lowball offer for a client, I just say, I'll present that. You have to by law, but I'm not going to give an indication as to how low that is to the other person. I'm going to keep stone faced. In objections, when we talk about, because I want to get to a couple of the objections, is if a buyer or a seller says to you, well, the other agent, you've been talking to this person, you've been supposedly going to be listing the property, and they've dragged you, they've ghosted you, you finally get in front of them, and they say, and Linda's my client, who I think is going to be my client, and Linda says, Deb, I feel so bad, but my husband wants to use his coworker. Sounds like you need to use them. Simple as that. But what do we tend to do? Well, really, do you want to stay friends with your coworker? Do you want to do this? Do you want, you try to talk yourself back in there. Whereas if I say, Linda, sounds like that's important, you should use them. Now, what's going to happen is if she's bluffing, you're going to know. Because if she's bluffing, she's going to say, well, I don't really agree with that, and he just got his license. So now we know that there's more to it. So don't be afraid to just say, no, sounds great. Just like I said, will you negotiate commission? No. Any other questions? Simple as that. You have to be in control. And remember, they're the decision makers. That is huge. The initial call, this is more for the actual process of an offer. These are just a couple tips. How many of you guys call the listing agent before you send an offer? Very few of you. I'm shocked. Okay, a couple of you. Yeah. You should always, 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 always call the listing agent. I don't care if you know everything about the house. You're calling the listing agent. Hey, Sandra, I'm about to write an offer on the home that you have listed at 123 Anywhere. Just want to say, what's most important to your seller? What do you mean? Half the time they're so shocked you call, they don't even know how to answer. So half the time you're shocked you got them on the phone, but you're gonna say, okay, Sandra, what's most important? Price, time. I just want to make sure that I know what's important. And you're gonna get more information. Don't give too much. Just give enough to guide them. And then Sandra says, well, she'd like to be moved to Tennessee by June. We know there's some motivation there. Okay. So you're gonna also get indicators for motivation. But you've created a couple things. You've created collaboration because you've created a friendly situation now. You've created a situation where you are finding out motivation and you're building rapport. Those are all things that you need for a good negotiation to happen. So now that we've built that rapport, now I know how to write the offer. And I'm going to come back to my buyer. It looks like they want to be there by June. Any chance we can move that closing up a little bit? What do you think? So that type of thing. But you always want to say, the other question is, say you're trying to find out if there's negotiating room with that listing agent. A lot of times people say, are they really firm on the price? Right? I've gotten those calls before. And I usually turn it around. I'll call and say, hey, Sandra, it sounds like your seller wants to sell it at list price with no closing costs, correct? And you would think, why would I ask that, right? But if you shut up and listen, half the time, you're going to find out.
As a listing agent, would you answer it?
I wouldn't.
I was about to say, I wouldn't either. It's like, no.
I wouldn't either, but like Jackie said, would you answer that question as a listing? No, you shouldn't answer it. But I'm telling you to do it because I'd say 90% of the people will. So I'm still going to call.
Okay.
But no, correct. As a listing agent, I wouldn't answer it, and I would expect now. And I'm also going to so if I called you and I said, so you probably want to sell it at list and no closing costs. I mean, technically, yeah, sure, I want to sell it. We want to sell it at that. I'm not going to give any more than that. But what happens with more inexperienced agents, well, they're probably good with a couple closing costs, and they have some room to negotiate. I'm like, okay. That's why I love when I see in the MLS discount for this or credit for that. Guys, you don't need to do any of that. You're gonna do that anyway. That's already given. So that's the thing. And also use mislabels and labels. What I mean by that is I already taught you what labels are, where I said it sounds like you want to sell at the right price or at the highest price. Oh, so if I hear you correctly, the seller's willing to negotiate to about 10% of the list price. I'm mislabeling it on purpose. So to see what they say. Again, I'm trapping an agent that doesn't know what they're doing. But it's strictly to, and in those handouts that you got, you have more explanations on each of these. That one's called an accusation audit. You're basically putting them on the spot, and they become defensive and start telling you way more than they should. And then you must obviously get education, always practice. Like I said, there's going to be some new things happening with the negotiation with Rennie, where I'm not at liberty to state it yet, but just keep an eye when these negotiation courses come back out. Take them. They're the best courses. It got started by the head guy from Procter & Gamble because he became a realtor, and he's like, he took the pre-licensing course, he took his exam, he goes, where's the negotiation in the course? And he's like, I cannot believe, because he was the head negotiator for Procter & Gamble for their global department. And he was like, I just don't understand why there's no training for negotiation in my state. He was in Arizona. So then he started researching it and saw that nowhere in the country is negotiation offered as part of the training or for pre-licensing or post-licensing. So he was like, wow, that's crazy. He goes, how am I supposed to, and to this day I get shocked when people say, I'm gonna list with that person because they're a friend of mine because they just got out of school. And I'm thinking, you're just putting a huge investment, a huge asset of yours in the hands of somebody that has no clue what they're doing. But people do it. So if you, and this is why I believe August 17th is going to be a positive situation, because we're going to see some positive changes. The real agents will stay, the bad agents will go, the real agents will persevere and remain, the other ones won't. But the reality is that you're going to be able to understand more on how to negotiate the value. I probably have about 200 more slides that I could give you, because like I said, it's a 12-hour course. I did put this presentation in the handout, so you'll have it with my notes in there. Because I wish I could give you more, but I want to make sure that I give you guys a little bit of time to also ask anything, any burning questions or anything. And just remember this one last point. View everything from the eyes of the Code of Ethics. Because the Code of Ethics can also give you the backbone if you have a buyer that's not wanting to sign a buyer brokerage agreement. You can say, well, Roberta, it's the law. Because it is the law. And not only is it the law, it's also against my Code of Ethics not to have it signed. So now I have two valuable reasons, especially for an analytical person. An analytical person is going to understand that. Are you asking me to drive without a license? Are you asking me to drink and drive? Are you asking me to speed? Are you asking me to break the law? Because that's what you're asking me to do. And you guys are all breaking the law when you do that. So don't encourage it. If you put them in the position of understanding that you have value, you're going to be okay. So understand that. I was going to have you guys do a quick exercise, which we won't have time for, but what I do want to show you, and if we need more of these, I'll pass them along. Let me see. Yeah, I think we're gonna need more of these. But you can take one and pass it along. You do have it in the handout. If somebody doesn't want the paper handout, you have it in the virtual one. But
Where can we get your handout?
I'll put it out up here in a second. But with that being said, just understand that negotiations are constantly changing, but the way to negotiate never has changed. So it's something that you can definitely view in the eyes of the Code of Ethics, view in the fact of the client, negotiate with and for the clients. You're going to also be negotiating with broker and other brokers. Negotiating still benefits. These are benefits. These are also things you can negotiate at. I mean, when you are going to a listing appointment, you can use all these. When you're going to a buyer's appointment, you can use all this. Keep in mind, you've all been doing listing presentations. The only difference with August 17th is that you're now going to also need to do buyer presentations. You basically are selling yourself to the seller, and nobody's freaked out about that, but yet we freak out about presenting to the buyer. So it's the same idea. And the more education you get, the better it's going to be. So with that, let me just go to one of the things that I was going to have you all do, which we're not going to do, but is play. Let me see it. I had it. Oh no, I didn't have it there. Let me make sure I have the handouts. Let me go over. Everybody got one? Okay, awesome. There's the handouts. You can play the practice it with your friends, family, your significant others, your dog. I don't care, but practice it and try to start seeing and label things, and see what you can figure out as people are doing. Purposely label things, and see how you can get to things. You know, understand, okay, so if I want my kids to do something, I'm gonna label it. So it sounds like to me you wanna go out tonight, don't you, sweetie? Yeah. So it seems like you might need to clean your room and wash your clothes before you go out tonight, right, sweetie? You know, you're gonna start using those labels. Anybody here have young kids that would have to say that too? You know, or your spouse, you know, Sounds like you wanna have a great date night, don't you? Sounds like you have to take me to my favorite restaurant, right? You know, so whatever, you know, you can use it however you want, but just start practicing it. As you read these handouts, like I said, I gave you quite a few in there. You'll be able to kind of determine a lot. There's some negotiation scenarios in there too, that you can practice with other agents and other friends, and just kind of get familiar with it. I do a second class, that's another 3 hours of C, where I concentrate a little bit more on the buyer end of it. This was kind of general. And I take a little bit of what I have in here and do more on it. I'm probably gonna do that one in July or August.
You could say on this sheet, if you don't get, you can't do a C.
Not the same one, it's a different course number.
You can take a different one, okay.
It's not the same course number purposely. Like I said, my course I normally teach is 12 hours, so I divided it into two, and at least it's 6 hours. It's still not my 12-hour course, but it's two separate ones. But with that, let's go to the aha moments. Any takeaways, any burning questions, anything that y'all want to discuss or question or ask? Nothing? Did you learn anything?
Yes.
All right, make sure you put the evaluations, I do need to send those to the state. You should have received, oh, you didn't receive them? Oh, I thought you did. Yeah, here's the evaluations, please take one, pass them down. And if you have any questions, feel free. This next one is my YouTube channel. I do put on my compliance chats. My compliance chats are on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. That's the one that I told you that we're going to do on the 26th. That's going to be on the NAR settlement exactly, specifically. But if you're interested, you will receive emails from us about the compliance chats, but they usually go to spam. So be checking